Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. This is crazy.
My name is in the file.
That's it. Letting y'all get in. Okay, we got 22 people. All right, how everybody doing? Hope everybody's okay. I know y'all just getting in. And what happened over here? What's going on, man? Security checkup, man. This thing's tripping, man. I'm sitting here trying to go live and TikTok over here tripping. I'm trying to do a live and everything. I mean, always 37 people. Okay. All right, how's everybody doing? I am, I kind of want to chop it up with everybody a little bit today. And what I wanted to talk about is I have been doing a lot of research into this space, and thank God there's AI is an invention that is fantastic, and I understand why a lot of people don't like AI in this space because they feel like AI is destroying their entire paradigm of what they think law is, what they think jurisdiction is, what they think their rights are. They have a certain type of thing that they see what they think is correct. And one of the good things I think, like when I came into this space, and I think that it was, is when I first learned this, I learned this from in jail. And from when I first came into this space, there was no one guiding me. There was nobody helping me. There was nobody telling me what to think or what was right or what was this. Everything I learned, I had to learn from reading. And I was given some documents in the beginning, like Patriot-like documents, where they tell you what a person is and the straw man and a lot of things. But I also was blessed with the ability to learn about public and private very early on. And I didn't just trust the information on its face. I went and had to verify it going to the law library, because I did that under the premise that all law, public and private, follows the same principles. Okay, so if I saw something on a private side, or maybe you want to call it admiralty or whatever, I knew that I would be able to see some sort of semblance of that within the statutory framework, because it's kind of like modeled after it. Because they follow principles. They all follow principles. And there will be times I was able to verify things. Like, for instance, a lot of you like to refer to it as a maritime matter. You like to say that a lot, that this is a maritime jurisdiction or admiralty. And you've never heard me say that. You've always heard me say it's a colorable admiralty jurisdiction. Okay, that is an important distinction, because no, admiralty was not given to Article 1. It's under the judiciary. However, Article 1, which are the legislative courts, they have a right to create courts to adjudicate matters or policy matters within the ambit of their delegated authority, which is what the statutes represent. So that's why they're taking you inside of administrative court, because they do have the authority to do that. But, this thing, just things like that, it's like, it's a public and private type thing that I had to go into the law library and see. And in studying admiralty and maritime, I would be able to see it. They don't call it admiralty or maritime. They call it a statutory jurisdiction. But what they did was they borrowed the procedural elements from the admiralty. Now, how did I find that out? Well, I took clerk's praxis and some other admiralty things, and I compared and contrasted with, like in Georgia, Title 18, which is creditor and debtor law. And, because I was able to locate the procedural framework matched with admiralty, and even in criminal law, when they arrest you first, all of that. And the reason why is because the common law did not facilitate commerce. In the public, they are dealing with commerce. That is their primary objective in public safety. So they adopted this admiralty procedural framework and borrowed it and put it inside of their statutory framework to facilitate commerce, because admiralty was better at facilitating commerce than common law was. So that's why they did that. And you find that out by, first of all, you have to study admiralty to be able to identify it when you see it. And that's what I noticed right off the rip, that in studying the clerk's praxis, there was a lot of strong similarities to, in the statutory framework. Like when they arrest you, they just arrest you and put handcuffs on you. Well, that comes from the admiralty. The admiralty does that, So that's what it is. So that's why somebody would possibly say that it's maritime admiralty, but it's not maritime admiralty. It's colorable in the sense that it imitated it. It looks like maritime admiralty, but it's not really maritime admiralty. It's their own unique jurisdiction that fits within a statutory framework, which is for facilitating commerce within a public regulatory activity. So when you get like this word person that everybody talks about, a person is a device that the public uses to attach duties and liabilities in order to classify certain conduct that you may engage in order to achieve either a remedy or some sort of penalty. Everything, like when you learn this and you start watching court shows, like real ones, like last night in our class, we were listening to them discuss, big fictitious instruments, you're making negotiable instruments to discharge debt. And you can do that, but there are certain things that you need to be wary of. Like you don't need to put routing numbers on it. You don't need to put anything on there that could possibly get you a public charge. And that includes language and all of that. So, in learning all of that, you see all of that, now you begin to understand where their jurisdiction operates and where yours is. And a lot of times, from what I can see, is the majority of people are very ignorant in this space of what the difference between public and private is. Private rights begin where public regulation ends. Private rights begin where public regulation ends. So you got to understand that. And so you got to understand that there's a public and a private, and the public has to be given their respect, because you see, government gets their authority from the Constitution. They have a delegation of authority. That's very akin to like when you give trustees power over irrevocable trust. The trustees have power within the ambit of their delegated authority, and the settlor nor the beneficiaries can't do anything about that because it's a contract. Well, the Constitution is like our contract with our government. We did give them the authority to do certain things, and you got to respect that when they're exercising within that scope. And you need to understand where your domain is. And that's what a lot of people refuse to recognize in this space. They don't want to... First of all, they don't want to acknowledge that they're wrong about some things. I'm not saying that everything is incorrect, but some things are incorrect. The only argument that I see that has any type of basis associated with it is the fact that they are bankrupt and they don't have any money. because a lot of this was a result of HJR 192 of June 5th, 1933. That's what kind of kicked all this off, was, the taking of the gold and the rescission of the gold clause and gold contracts. And then now placing us in a debt-based system where there's no money of exchange. And that's what brought a lot of things into question, like, a allodial title to land and taxation and, and this notion that, you're a slave, if you got a social security number and things like that. And there is some, basis to that. Working for somebody else is really kind of like a form of slavery. If you just really want to be really technical about it, that's where we kind of get into, a gray area. But how the system is set up and it's expecting everybody to be a merchant or operating commerce. That's how the public system is set up. It's set up where it looks at all of you as the potential of being a business owner. And that's what it's set up to, it's conducive to that fact. It really wasn't set up for employees. That's why employees don't receive the greatest benefit from it. And you get taxed so heavily when you take money and you get paid, because you're taking money out of the public and into the private. And anytime that happens, there always is a heavy tax associated with that. But when you leave money into the public in the business realm, they give you a lot of deductions and things like that, because they reward you for doing business, for keeping everything in the public and not taking anything out. And that's kind of like how people got to start to kind of analyze and look at this when they start to play the game and how taxation works. Everything in the public is about a tax or some sort of fee or something like that, some sort of regulatory type issue. But that's the public, and that's the public only. Okay, in the private, you can arrange your affairs in such a way where you don't have to submit yourself to public regulatory authority, or you can place a buffer between you and that authority to shift liability away from yourself. The name of the game is really to limit liability or eliminate liability totally. That's kind of the name of the game. You got to think of this game as a business game, that you're either going to play by the rules or you're not. It's a business game. It's all business. And when Jason Whitney and what's my man's name? I can't think of his name right now. But the word Jordan Maxwell. They did the video, The Occult World of Commerce. And occult means hidden. And in there, it was one memorable line that Jason Whitney said that I just never forgot, my first time watching it. And he said, it's all just business. It's all just business. When Jason Whitney said that, and I can say this, Jason Whitney, if you're listening right now, I got to tell you, bro, you was absolutely 100% correct. All this shit is just business. And I'm not even trying to, I'm not even trying to go that direction. It's but just study, the deeper I study the law, the deeper and deeper that I study the law, like in particular when we're talking about trust. Okay, well, a trust is used optimally to engage in business. So you have a business trust. Okay, but there are certain things that have to go along with that if you do it properly, to administer it correctly. You just can't form one and then say, I got one. You can't do that. It has to be administered properly, and it has to be the right people have to be put in place to make it operate properly. But there's things you have to do, and that's why a lot of people don't want to do some of these things, because it's going to require action on their part. They're going to have to learn how to become astute businessmen and women. But as a man, you got to understand your family is your business. All interaction that you engage with in the prosecution of taking care of your family is going to be business related in some capacity. So as a man, it's your responsibility, in my opinion, to understand how to conduct business properly in the public when you have to engage other individuals. That's a duty and a responsibility of yours, because to have an ordered society, you have to have rules. All right. So when you have people who are basically, they're basically, pushing for, a change. Like you hear people that constantly in this space, they're always saying that the government is terrorizing people. Always is this anti-government rhetoric that you keep hearing. There's no accountability anywhere in their speech for any action or conduct that they engaged in. I've been doing this 20 years, and I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. Like during the foreclosure debacle, everybody does want to demonize the banks for the foreclosure debacle. And granted, there is some basis for people being pissed off. There really is. But what they won't say is that prior to the foreclosure debacle, when they were letting people come in and get unstated loans, okay, and just based off your credit score and whether or not you had a business in place and a few other boxes you had to check, you didn't have to provide any financial statements or anything like that. And people were getting all these loans and inflating the value of properties and engaged in all kind of, what I'm saying, just, fraudulent activity, and then call themselves real estate investors and made all this money. A lot of people made money during that time. And then the government came right around and figured out a way to take all that shit back. That's what happened. It's a cause and effect thing, but nobody talks about that. But you keep demonizing the government. I was back during that time. I saw everything went down. I was there at the beginning and the end of it. I was involved in real estate investing during that time. I saw what was going on. I saw how everything went down. And it was like, and they turned around and, they know how to utilize interest rates and things like that to make changes in society, to shift the economic patterns of society. And that's what they did. But that's the thing, that's the only thing I'm saying. So I guess let me get back on track. What I'm trying to say is this. If you're going to really study the law, not just be in an echo chamber, pulling up a little citation of authority and just reading 2 or 3 sentences and saying, see, here is the law, and this represents the law, and you're reading that case law out of context, because when you actually go and read the case and see the context in which the statement was made, sometimes it's not even related to what you're talking about. It's not even related to what you're talking about. So you have to, first of all, embrace that right there, because if you don't, you can't ever be considered competent, and you damn sure can't say that you're right about something. You can't say that you're right about something. You got to, if you're going to deal in the law, you're going to have to study the law, what the law says. You're going to have to look up definitions to words. You're going to have to understand grammar. It's very important for you to understand grammar. You're going to have to understand the context that words are used in according to jurisdiction. You're definitely going to have to learn principles of law. You're going to have to learn those things because the law is scientific. It is structured scientifically. It's beautiful the way it's structured. I can see why people get into it and fall in love with it if you have the kind of analytical mind that works like that, because it is very structured and procedural, and everything is put in place in a very ordered way. Even like when we're talking about getting classification of a person, person falls into a classification. And there are different kinds of persons. Like a trustee is a person and an employee is a person, but they have different types of classifications. So there are going to be different types of laws that apply to that. And like you have people like they'll go in the chat, right? And you'll be talking to them like this, and they'll start this like anti-government rhetoric just right off the bat. I'm telling you, I think that also that this space has been infiltrated too, because I don't ever remember it like that. You know what I'm saying? Where when we used to come together and have discussions about topics like this, it'd be a lot of intelligent people involved in the conversation, and it wasn't so indicting of government all the time. It was taking an objective stance and evaluating our position vis-a-vis the government. What our rights are, what are our rights really? What rights do we really have? Not just from some cursory reading of the Constitution and then trying to interpret that when we don't even know that the Constitution don't even have anything to do with us. The Constitution creates government and restrains government. It doesn't grant you any rights. It doesn't grant you any rights whatsoever. It protects private rights. That's what it protects, private rights. That's what the Constitution protects. And so and private rights begin where public regulation ends. Private rights begin where public regulation ends. You need to take that to the bank. That is a statement you need to memorize. Private rights begin where public regulation ends. That's a sure doing wacky stuff. When you know law, you love law and just want constitutional law enforced. Constitutional law is being enforced. Just you making that statement, it lets me know that you don't understand the application of the Constitution. What is not being enforced? You got like private property cannot be taken without due process of law and just compensation, as well as the fact that you have that they can make no law that will impair the obligation of contracts. So your superpower is the ability to contract unlimited. What you have to learn how to do is to conduct your affairs through contracts. And then that's when you get your immunity and your powers from. But you're not doing that. What you're trying to do is assert a private right and use it within a public regulatory framework, and you don't have no power to do that. And they have every right to do what they're doing to you, put you in jail and whatever the fuck they're doing to you, because you are a danger, because you're ignorant. You're ignorant. I'm trying to tell you, you're some sort of anarchist. You're trying to dismantle the government and install your own government. And let me tell you something. If I was a ruler of a country and I had people in my kingdom like that, I'd make an example of you. I'd put you in front of everybody and behead you. If I was like a king and I found out like how some of y'all talk about the government and everything, from the standpoint, I can say this. The government is very, very tolerant of you. Very, very tolerant. But I also see why they're giving all these sovereign citizens all this time now. Man, they hit the sovereign citizens upside the head with time. And I can see why, because that's what they do to make examples of people. And you're not catching on that they have a lot of videos on YouTube for all the things that you talk about. They got an answer for. They putting all that shit on YouTube to let you know, look, we done studied y'all entire script. None of that shit is going to work in a court that y'all on social media platforms talking about. It's crazy to even think you can be on social media talking about some shit. That's why I went off board. You got to come to my school now. You don't need to be discussing this shit in the open like this, man. They studied every single thing that y'all talk about. Right to travel. I'm not that person. You don't have jurisdiction over me. They got an answer for all that shit. They got an answer for all that shit. You're not going to win no argument down that road. And which, when you look at history, that's how it's always been anyway, because they always would adapt, and then we would adapt. We would adapt too. We take it to another level, and then they have to readapt. But that's not what's happening. What y'all doing is regurgitating the same shit. I was just reading to my class how this tax protester argument is the same argument you've been making that has never won any court case since 1986. These sovereigns, these are patriot people, been making these tax protester arguments since 1986, and they are saying them in the exact same way today that they were said back in 1986, and there's no track record of them winning anything on a tax protester argument. And reasonably so, because where taxes operate, they operate in the public regulatory framework that has to do with the regulation of business. And you have when they say voluntary reporting, they're not talking about voluntarily reporting taxes. They're talking about how you report your taxes. That's what they're talking about, because when you incur a tax, there's either tax avoidance or tax evasion. This is not talking about, I got a choice. This is some ignorant ass nigga shit. I'm trying to tell you, if you really look at some of the things that they say in these patriot circles, you can't help but come to the conclusion, this dude, whoever started, passing this around, he was ignorant. And all the people listening to it, you can't come to no other conclusion. You can't come to any other conclusion like, man, who the fuck circulated this shit, man? This shit had never got circulated. And then once it gets circulated, it takes years to stop it. I've seen it. You can put out videos. I didn't put out videos about birth certificate authentication and everything. That came from Minnesota Rule of Practice 220. They don't talk about that anymore. Man, that shit's still circulating. Like 7-8 years strong. Still circulating. I made a video like 7 years ago. And it still circulates strong. You can't stamp it out. It just keeps circulating. People find new creative ways to take a falsehood and modify it into a new falsehood. You know what I'm saying? And that's all they're doing. But nobody will go back to the source and study and see, well, where did this shit come from? You know, like that should be the first question you could ask somebody on a chat or in a group. When they make some statement, you're like, where'd you get that from? And if they can't pull up the law that substantiates what they're saying, they made it up. They just pulled it out of their ass. That's what a lot of them are doing. They just saying law based off of what they feel the law should be. That I'm supposed to be free to do whatever I want to do. That's really the underlying thing. And you ain't free to do whatever you want to do. What the fuck is wrong with you? Well, in what society you going to go into ever in the history of man where you can just do whatever the fuck you want to do? Statutory consumer protection applied whether or not the consumer has read the statute. Well, that's absolutely correct. Statutes apply once it's been triggered. See, there are statutory triggers, and that's what you have to learn when you are a private person. You have to understand what are the statutory triggers. When I put out that video on here, the 50 terms that trigger statute begins with terminology. Just using certain terminology will trigger a statutory jurisdiction. And once statutory jurisdiction attaches, it is not relinquished until the termination of the suit. So you need to know these things. So if you identify the statutory triggers, now you know how to avoid them. Now you can arrange your affairs in such a way where you will not trigger that or bring them into your business. But first of all, you got to respect their jurisdiction. That's what a lot of people don't want to do. They don't respect their jurisdiction. That it does make them a terrorist. Because they don't understand, they ignorant of the law. They ignorant of the law, man. It's bad. And let me tell you something. The government is kind of at fault because they should have taught, and I hope the government is listening very closely to what I'm about to say. This sovereign citizen thing could have been avoided if you had taught proper civics in public school and elementary, starting in elementary. Because a lot of this shit can be put into elementary school kids. Like this thing about public and private and police powers and the Constitution. You know, you can't sit here and say ignorance of the law is no excuse and then expect everybody just to know all the law when they were educated in a public school system with a curriculum you provided, because that's what public school is. Public school means the government provides the curriculum. The government provides the curriculum. So you provided the curriculum and you neglected, all right, to educate them on basic fundamental civics. And now you want to call them terrorists and things like that because they're coming into your courts asserting rights that are, yes, I agree, fundamentally incorrect. But I can understand how they reach that conclusion though, without any guidance, without proper guidance, which was not given to them. So, you know, and at the same time too, like for instance, with the discharge debt thing, discharge debt does have a basis. You know, there's a basis in that. You can make an argument for that. You can make an equitable argument that the United States government owes a duty to the American people for the taking of the gold and silver. Because every time you discharge a debt, what you're doing is you're making an equitable claim against H.R. 192 of June 5th, 1933. All right, because of the removal of the gold. But see, there's even things with that because gold wasn't totally removed. Private people, we operate through contracts. Gold is a commodity and is traded on the commodities exchange, which deals with contracts. If we wanted to deal with gold, that's where we should be going. If we want to deal with gold between each other, they do have an exchange for us to facilitate that with. But that requires money too. To really be private the way you want to be, you got to have money, man. That's what the true sovereign is, a wealthy individual. And the results of that wealth are derived from the way that he thinks, no other source, but the way that he has ordered his thinking in a scientific way to draw to him the resources that he needs. That's one of the marks of a sovereign too. They know how to think in a particular way, in an abundant way. And they will never adopt a victim mentality and say someone is victimizing them because they know they're in control of all things. That's the sovereign mindset. The true sovereign mindset thinks like that. It doesn't think in the way that you think of how you think you're a victim, the government is terrorizing you and things like that. It doesn't think like that. The true sovereign mind knows how to think in such a way he won't even allow or bring or manifest those circumstances in his space. He'll never even have to deal with that because of the way he thinks. He's not even going to manifest that in his space. He's not going to manifest anything other in his space. I'm not advocating for anything. And see, this is how another thing, what they do. You tell them something, they'll say, you are saying something. I'm not advocating for anything. I'm not saying anything. That's how it is. It's a private and public side. Public and private don't mix. They have something called private ordering. Okay, I'll say this again. It's called private ordering. In private ordering, you have to use contracts, private trusts, private member associations, or unincorporated private associations. Those are your 4 tools in your toolbox to operate privately with. Okay, we can narrow this down. And once you understand that, okay, that's what you're doing. You're using contracts to trade gold. If you want to deal in gold, gold is a commodity now. It's not that I'm advocating for anything. You want to get gold coins and do it on your own, you can. I'm just saying is they provided a venue to facilitate your private transactions on. You can participate in that or not. Most of you don't even have no money to even try to engage in that as high as gold is. Gold is very, very expensive now, but I'm not going to say everybody. Obviously, there are people who do, but the thing about it is that not the average person is what I mean. The average person is not going to be, dealing with that. What I'm trying to say is there's a private domain that is available for you to operate in. Your thing is you have to understand that it exists first and foremost, and that there are rules that govern it. And in order for it to be effective for you, you have to also respect the private, because it will not be effective for you if you don't respect, the public. It will not be effective for you if you don't respect the public. There's a public and a private, and they don't mix. The public is the government's domain. The private is your domain. The superior man stays in his own domain. You got to understand where your domain is and what the rules of it are and what are the consequences whenever you come out of the private into the public. That is usually subjecting you to some sort of statutory regulatory scheme, because all private action gets reinterpreted when it comes into the public through a statute. Okay, so this demarcation line that separates public from private, once you understand the private domain and the public domain, and you respect the public domain, because why? They received a delegation of authority from the federal and state constitutions. They do have an ambit of delegated authority to operate in. You have to respect that. Within that ambit, they exercise what is called plenary powers. You have to respect that. Okay, once you respect that and you understand where your domain is and the power that is afforded to you and the rules that are associated with it, you learn those, you'll be okay. You'll learn those too, if that's what you truly desire. Because if you're truly desiring freedom, then you also truly desiring a lot of responsibility. Because with a lot of freedom comes a lot of responsibility. Okay? So if you're ready to take on that responsibility of all that type of freedom, that means you got to build a framework for yourself to operate in. Nothing's going to be done for you. There's no public servants that are going to come and build it for you. You have to build it yourself. That's the private domain. So when you look at these, I'll give you an example of a private member association. Like these orders, like the Illuminati, Rosicrucians, Skull and Bones, all these are private member associations. They have an internal governance. And then they have their meeting places. They have a way that they operate. You call it a secret society. But what it is just private. They've set their own rules and they operate within a framework that they set up. They got their chapters all over the place. They have positions of power in different ways and everything. They can help each other facilitate things and everything. Yeah, private member association. It would help. You could do the same thing. You could start a secret order and then start accumulating a lot of members and then send them out and get them in political positions and then facilitate a network for yourself. There's nothing stopping you from doing that either. There's nothing from stopping you from doing that. Just from the fact that, first of all, you ignorant of the rules are. You got to learn what the rules are first. Once you understand what the private rules and the public rules are, now you can start to put together a plan. You say, okay, I see how this shit work now. All right, okay, I see how it works. I see how it works now. That's all I'm saying. Right now, it's like the Wild West. Everybody just thinks that they can do anything they want, they can, and that's not how it works. You're welcome. I appreciate that. It says, let me see, it says, the private member associations are everywhere. All these lodges scattered everywhere. Fix had made a show about it. It is, that's what they are. I got a chance to read a Rosicrucian articles of incorporation, for lack of a better term. That's all it is. I'm reading it and I'm saying, damn, this is a private member association. They have their own enforcement. Like if a member violates, that punishment is going to come down from inside the group. They're not going to resort to any type of public authorities. And I keep telling people the best movie I've seen up to date that talks about it is John Wick. That John Wick, that's what it is. That's a private member association. It's a straight private member association. That's how it works. That's what they're showing you. And how they operated with gold. And no business was conducted in any other form of currency but gold. The first time you see Federal Reserve notes in that movie, they get burnt up. And if John Wick 1, they don't want nothing to do with the public. The technology they're not using, they're using like analog technology, not digital technology. All that, they're showing you all that for a reason. Because they're saying they're operating privately. They want to keep their affairs private, and they know how to do that. Their world, they have to keep their world separate from the public world. And you have to understand how both worlds operate and where the demarcation lines are. As I said, remember this, privacy begins where public regulation ends. Privacy begins where public regulation ends. That's the demarcation line. Study that line, and now you learn how to order yourself. The closest one may know and what has been widely publicized in LA Costa Nostra. I don't know what that is. Yeah, first time I saw the movie, I was hurt when they burnt all their money. I still didn't fully understand at the time. Yeah, it's like they private. They can't have nothing to do with that. It ain't worth nothing to them. That money's not even used in their world. So it didn't make his whole world, in their world, that money has no use. They don't use that money in their world. It didn't mean nothing to him. In his world, it's gold and silver. That's all you saw. Every time a transaction was conducted, when the people came to remove those bodies out of his house, he gave them a gold coin. When he went and stayed at the hotel and got a room, he gave a gold coin. Why do you think they kept showing y'all that? Come on, man. Start looking at a movie with an eye for education and not simply for the entertainment value. Because that's where they have elected to give you notice of what their intentions are. Through movies. They don't tell you, you elect how you're going to take it. They give you notice. I can tell when you have a great comments because then I can comprehend what you're saying, commentary. John Wick is the movie I'm talking about, the first one. It says, if I violate as a member and another member punches me, can I use the criminal law? Not if you got a private member association, there's going to be something in the contract that is that first of all is going to address the conduct of the members, obviously, because that is one of the ways. That's one of the 4 rules that you order in the private world is people can be expelled because their conduct is not in agreement with the rules of the group. So there's going to be rules for conduct. And if there's a violation of that rule, there's an arbitration clause. In other words, there's a governing body that will adjudicate that matter privately. It's not going to be taken into the public sphere. All of it is arranged and set up contractually. The whole private world operates through contracts and agreements. 100%. That's what keeps them out. And that is why that clause is in the Constitution, in Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution, that they can make no law that will impair the obligation of contracts. And we have the ability to contract unlimited. That is our superpower. That's our superpower. But you got to learn how to use that to your benefit and not your detriment. And the first way to understand how to do that is to understand the demarcation line that separates public from private. And you got to stop this wild ass shit that you're doing, because once you understand that, you'll also understand how to read the law. You won't need me to tell you anything. Once you understand that public and private line, the law library is going to open up to you. It's going to open up to you. You're going to understand everything that you're reading. Like, okay, damn. You're going to read those, you're going to read them rulings and understand why the judge ruled the way that he ruled, everything. And you're going to come to the conclusion, damn, I was wrong about some shit. Okay, I see the door I'm supposed to walk through right now. That's why I'm supposed to be operating. I've been on the wrong field. I've been fighting on the wrong field, against these people. I got my own playground over here. I'm trying to play in their playpen and dictate to them what to do. And I have my own playpen over there that I'm supposed to be playing in. But it's only available for the individuals who are industrious, who are goal-oriented, who understands, who have ordered thinking. When I say ordered thinking, I'm saying constructive thought. Constructive thought is how you attract things to yourself. You're some sort of creator. You're not sitting on your ass waiting for something to be handed to you. That world is not for you. You need to stay in the public. If you're looking for a handout, you need to stay in the public, because what they do is the welfare state. That's what that's for. People looking for handouts. You belong in the public domain, but you need to accept the fact that you're going to be regulated. You need to accept that fact and stop crying about it. Why would a policy enforcer use Pennsylvania versus Mims during a traffic stop? I don't know. I haven't read Pennsylvania versus Mims, but I can be sure that you don't understand what you're reading. I've never read Pennsylvania versus Mims. Why would you assume that I've even read that when that's a state? You know how much case law is out there? It's thousands and thousands of case law. You know what I'm saying? I could literally quote hundreds of traffic stop case laws. Why am I supposed to know anything about that case that you're talking about? I have no, if you want me to put it in, I can have ChatGPT pull it real quick and tell you in 2 seconds what it's talking about. But give me this full citation. Give me the volume number. Give me the reference book, the reference code, and then the page number and the year of publication. Since you want to put a citation of authority, hopefully you know how to read a citation. So publish that for me so I can make sure that I got it exactly right. I need the volume number, the reference code, the page number, and the year of publication. That's called the citation. Provide me of that. It says, you said private ordering. Yes, Google the word private ordering right now. Google it. Use your AI Google right now if you got one. Pull up private ordering. What is that? Use it based off polarity with your statement. Okay, let's see what this is. Use it based off polarity. Would your statement be both true and false at the same time? If so, how? No, it wouldn't be true and false at the same time based off polarity. The polarity that exists is there's a public and a private. Those are the polarities of each other. They coexist with each other. There's a private domain and a public domain. All right? I'm not understanding. Maybe you need to rephrase that, because if you're looking for some sort of paradox, okay, because that's what you're seeking based off polarity, the paradox. The paradox usually works in favor of reality. In reality. So I'm not really sure what it is that you're trying to ask me, because how I look at the polarity, that one side of the polarity is public and the other side of the polarity is private. They're two separate ends of a spectrum of the same thing. And, no, it's not going to be right at the same time and wrong at the same time. You're ignorant of the law. Especially right to travel people and you tax protester people. You're the main ones. You're the worst ones. And I'm telling you that with my chest. And you don't have any law to substantiate what you're saying. I don't care how mad you get at me. I done looked at this very, very closely. Every time somebody put a citation in my face, I study it, and it never says what they think it says. It never says what they think it says. You got to understand police power. And this is why I'm going to tell you why the argument always fails, and I can say it with my chest, because you haven't studied inherent powers or implied powers or police powers. You don't engage in those conversations. So you're not really studying true civics, because that's a part of understanding true civics. You can't ignore that. That's part of governmental structure. So you can't ignore it. So since you're ignoring it, I can't conclude that you are a true student of civics and of the law. I can't take you seriously. You're just trying to assert something that you made up because there's nothing to substantiate what you're saying. Nothing to substantiate. It's about voluntary agreements. It's not about voluntary agreements. They don't need your voluntary agreement. See, that's some more of that echo chamber bullshit that can't be substantiated anywhere. Because I just told you about police powers and inherent powers, implied powers. See, implied powers are derived. See, a government receives a delegation of authority from its constitution. Now they have powers that have been given to them. Now the enforcement of those powers, there have to be some sort of implied power that they have to bring those powers into force. So that's what inherent powers are. Another name for it is implied powers. And under that is police powers to regulate their jurisdiction, their territorial jurisdiction. They have what is called plenary power. Why won't you look that word up? Why don't y'all circulate that word within your groups, plenary powers? Well, if you're really talking law, why aren't you studying delegation of powers doctrine? Why aren't you studying separation of powers? And, and how plenary power goes into that. How come if you really want to talk about that you're studying the law, I don't see any of y'all talking like that. It's all some basic regurgitated shit. Like we have to have a contract, I'm agreed to it. I'm not that person. You don't have jurisdiction over me. I'm traveling in my private conveyance. All this bullshit that I've been hearing people say for the last 15 years. You know what I'm saying? And then finding out that they've been saying it longer than that. Because here's the thing. This is why y'all regurgitate shit. I see why that happens. I'm going to explain why that happens. Okay, as someone who's been on this internet about, I'm going to say, man, close to at least about 15 years, in this space. Okay, I've watched how information gets erased off the internet and certain gurus just fall out of, nobody even remembers who they are. One time they were very prominent, and then the next thing you know, nobody, like Tim Turner, and Tony King. In 2010, they were the biggest names in the game. Today, nobody don't even really know who the fuck they are. Like, who are they? And so I see how that happens. And then the next thing I see is how the regurgitation happens, the recycling of information from the previous generation. And because this new generation, they haven't heard it before, nor have they heard of the gurus of the past generation. So it's all new information to them. But it's just regurgitated. One of the things that gets regurgitated a lot are tax protester arguments. The same tax protester arguments have been made in these anti-tax groups since 1986. And all the people go to jail. Everybody goes to jail. Another thing that gets circulated real bad that seems to perpetuate itself is this notion that a private trust, if you get that, you don't have to pay taxes. I've been hearing that for 15 years, as well as you can put a foreclosed property in a trust and they can't foreclose on you. And people losing their homes or getting arrested right behind it. That has consistently happened all through the years that I've been watching this. People get fucked up behind it. Consistently. But they'll assert it as if it's true. But I've been watching it for 15 years and I haven't seen not one time where it's true. But I see the energy that each successive generation puts behind it to assert that it is true, even though it hasn't been proven to be correct. And then when you start to analyze it, when you truly analyze it, like I did with the right to travel, then you begin to see this guy doesn't understand what he's reading. Next, you're going to have to contend with the fact he's not going to acknowledge that he doesn't understand what he's reading. So now you're coming across arrogant to him when you're simply trying to give him, look, man, I've been doing this for a long time. You need to give me a benefit of a doubt in what I'm saying. Yes, there's always the possibility I could be wrong, but I don't think so. And it's right here. What these people are telling you is true in these courtrooms. If you're truly private, you're not even supposed to be in their courts. If you read the definition of private ordering right off the bat, you should be like, damn, this is it. This is it. God damn, this is what I've been looking for right here. This is it. Just by you reading the definition of it, should tell you everything you need to know. It should tell you, it should put a halt to everything out there that people are talking about and a complete reevaluation of your position, an acknowledgement of where you were wrong, an adjustment, and come back so you can be effective. And stop looking like terrorists out here and start looking like civilized, upstanding citizens to these people instead of ignorant heathens. Because that's what they're looking at people as, some type of ignorant heathens. Let me see, fact finder hasn't found any facts. I don't know what you mean by the fact finder hadn't found any facts. You see, those are slogans. Let me tell you another thing that they do in these spaces. They use a lot of slogans. They have a lot of slogans. They don't have any real law or anything like that. They use slogans. They use condescending. They engage in a lot. They try to attack your intelligence, but it won't work. You know, it's like, because you can't ever. This is the thing that you can tell the unenlightened or the unintelligent person. This is one of the hallmarks of that type of individual. They don't understand that the truth wills out, that you can't ever defeat truth. The truth is going to always come to the surface. So when you see it, only a fool ducks when the truth is thrown at him. Only a fool does that. When you throw the truth at a fool, only a fool ducks when the truth is thrown at him. You gotta take your research up another notch before you can critique what I'm saying. It's very apparent that you haven't. Like a lot of y'all will put citations of authority on the screen. You know good and goddamn well you ain't read that case. You haven't read it. I read cases so much it's easy to do now. All I do on my classes, I read case law. Especially on trust day, we read a lot of case law from trust. A lot of case law involving trust. So you have to, if you're going to be a professional at trust, you got to read a lot of case law. Ain't no way around it. Not be a professional. There's no fucking way. There's no fucking way you're going to be a professional at trust, private trust, and you don't read case law. There's no way. It's not. You can read a little article. You can read a little like a wise, concise trustee handbook, American jurisprudence on trust. You can read anything you want. Bogart's on trust or whatever. It's not. All those books are going to direct you to case law. They're going to have a citation there, but you're not going to read it. You're just going to stop it and read whatever in the paragraph, but not go and read the case. You're going to learn so much more. That little page is only going to give you 10%. You read the case, it got 90% in there that, like, damn. Yes, people need to learn the difference between listening, hearing. Many people seem to know the difference between them. Do not to know the difference. Yeah, listening and hearing, yeah. It says, we changed your perspective on licensing. What changed my perspective on licensing is when I, first of all, when I took a deep dive into police powers and inherent powers, and then went back and read all the case law that I had read before, like Shapiro versus Tompkins and things like that, and see like, damn, here it is right in here. I read this shit wrong. See, I can acknowledge when I'm wrong, because that means I'm going to grow. If you can't acknowledge when you're wrong, you can't grow. That's mathematically impossible. It's mathematically impossible to have the ability not to acknowledge when you're wrong and think you're going to grow as a person. That's no way that can happen. So, it's like I'm wrong. Because you know what I was doing? I was listening to a lot of you, because, right to travel ain't my thing. And y'all was saying that it's a commercial activity, in which commerce is regulated within a certain jurisdiction. But that's not where operating a motor vehicle falls under. It falls under police powers, because it's a public safety issue. Because you are operating a motor vehicle with the capability of injuring another person. You see it in all of the case law. They're going to even argue it when you bring you into court. You start talking about all this right to travel shit. They're going to tell you right there, but you ain't going to listen. You're not going to hear them. I done seen it a million times. They tell it to you, but you're not listening because you think you're so right. That shit has been ingrained in you so hard that you'll go to jail behind it, kicking and screaming. You go to jail behind it, kicking and screaming, and you're not right. You're not right. See, when I understood inherent powers, that made me understand the case law in a different way. I looked at it with a different eye, and then I was like, "Damn, it's not commerce. It don't have anything to do with commerce. Drive is a commercial term, but that's not where jurisdiction attaches. It's not attaching through some sort of commercial activity. It's attaching through public safety, because that's the duty of government. Protect your property, protect your borders, and protect your liberty. They hold first thing is public safety. Even in the de jure Republican form of government, that's their duty to you, to protect your life and liberty. That's their job to do. And if you're operating a motor vehicle, that has the potential of killing someone. So they're going to regulate that right. They're not taking it away from you. They're regulating it. They have to make sure that you don't cause harm to. You can do anything you want as long as you don't harm or do anything to anybody else. That has potential of crossing that line. Therefore, that activity is going to get regulated. I don't understand why that's so hard for people to understand and see. As I said, I know that I'm being looked at as the villain. So y'all trying to think, oh, the government got to them, some old dumb shit like that. Anything other than the fact that, hey, I'm wrong, or maybe I didn't understand what I was reading. You'll embrace any other answer except that. It says the right to travel is insane. You want to fight, just what fight at that point. You have a choice of chaos or peace, and people are choosing chaos over driving. They are choosing chaos, and they're choosing chaos from the wrong posture. It's like you really have to, like I said, it really at the foundation of this, it is a failure in the educational system. Because when I was growing up, we used to have things like Schoolhouse Rock. Like, I understood separation of powers. There's a lot of people in this space, they don't even understand that. That was a basic thing that a lot of people understood when I was growing up. I understood separation of powers when I was like 5 years old, 6 years old. I understood it. So I know these concepts can be understood by children at a very early age. They got, right now, if you get on YouTube, they got a Schoolhouse Rock, it's called 3 Ring Circus. I used to watch that as a little boy. So they were taking steps to try to educate people, and at least through Saturday morning cartoons. They don't try to do none of that shit anymore. They're not trying to educate anything anymore. The public school system needs a deep overhaul on its curriculum and really in the methodology that they use to teach people, because it's outdated, it's antiquated. We're in a different time. People learn differently now. We got the internet. It's like school is antiquated. Their methodology of trying to teach, and it's already proven to be a failure. The sheriff of Mecklenburg doesn't know this branch of government. I would beg to differ. I'm not going to say that. I'm going to question you. Do you understand the branch of government first? Before I question him, I'm going to question you first. Do you know? It says, it really is a beautifully constructed system, even if the nefarious, yeah, it is. I agree with that. The system is put together nicely. When you understand how they put everything together, it's put together very scientifically. It's put together very scientifically, man. You gotta. This is, I say, okay, I see how it operates, and like even with taxes, I think it was named Mandelhouse. He made this statement. He said the people who understand the system are going to love it, and the people who don't understand it are going to hate it. Colonel Edward Mandelhouse, the one that made that thing about your birth certificate, that he was going to make you all slaves and things. He made that statement. I remember reading that. He was saying that the people who understand it are going to love it, and the people who don't understand it are going to hate it. And I understand what he's talking about. That's true. Because the law is very important to understand, to function prosperously in a society. You need to know the law. And even before you learn man's law, you got to learn God's law. Okay, that even comes before man. Before it comes what they call positive law, you need to understand what the natural laws are. You got to understand what those laws are, because those are the structure. One is the structure of the nature of reality, and one is the structure of the framework that man has put in place to operate within that reality in an orderly way. Okay, so you got to understand both of those things. Those should be foundational, I think, as far as the civics of any people. So you won't have things that we're having, because I can see that something like Marxism, communism, or socialism, those are a result of an ignorance of people not properly educated in natural law principles. All right. That's how you would gravitate toward that political ideology because you have absent in you an education in the functions of natural law. You're even taught to eschew natural law within that framework, within that ideology. You know, it's an atheistic type of ideology that it comes along with that supports it. So I can see why you would gravitate to something like that because you're deficient in a certain area. Once you are sufficiently educated in natural law and positive law, now we can have a citizen that understands what his rights and duties are, and he can be operate in a harmonious society. He also will understand clearly what is expected of him. All right, how to be a productive citizen in society, because that's another thing. You're not supposed to be trying to live off anyone. You're supposed to be trying to put together, come up with some idea through your creativity to create a system that will, utilizing your innate talents, that you can subsist off of, that will take care of you and your family. And if you do that, I guarantee you, you will make money. I have never seen anyone not exercising his talents to the fullest where he refused to give up, not get rewarded after working hard behind it. I've never seen hard work go unrewarded. I haven't. I haven't. You put in the effort to do it, it's going to get rewarded. It's a cause and effect. So that's what I'm talking about, like understanding the natural laws, because then you'll understand how to conduct yourself in business, what the rules are, because like as above, so below. You know, there are certain systems, those things translate into the business world. You know, vibrational frequencies, mentalism, all that translates into the business world. That's what Charles Handel, who is the author of the Master Key series, and this Master Key series is a book that was allegedly, is one of the reasons that Bill Gates, he dropped out of Harvard and became one of the richest men in the world. It's 24 lessons. And these guys are like master masons and things like this. But what it is teaching you how to use constructive thought. And constructive thought is understanding the relationship between the conscious and subconscious mind and how to impregnate the subconscious mind, because the subconscious mind is feminine, okay? We impregnate the subconscious mind and bring things into manifestation. Manifestation is always brought through the female, through the feminine gate. That's why they want females to act like men now, because they don't want them that man. And also the women are acting like this is because the women have a right to be pissed off with a man that is satisfied wherever he's at, who's content. A woman has a right, in my opinion, I'm going to say my opinion, but I'm coming from natural laws too, because your job is to create and give her something to manifest. And when you are content, you're not doing that for her. All right? You're not doing that for her. You're not creating anything to bring into manifestation. And then she's going to start complaining. All right? Complaining and all in your ear and shit because you are on your ass content with your station in life. You shouldn't be content. You're supposed to be using your creative forces. You can have anything you want, anything you can conceive and believe you can achieve. So once you understand what the limitations are, why not dream big? It's just as easy to dream. It requires the same amount of mental energy to have a big dream as it does to have a midget dream. The same amount of mental energy. So why elect to have the less when you can have the more? Abundance is your birthright. So, okay, you as men, you're supposed to be getting out there bringing in abundance. Every day, that's what you should be striving for. What type of impression you're leaving on life? You're trying to get something for nothing. I was talking to my class about this. I was asking this question. What is it? Why are you constantly trying to think of ways to get around shit? I want you to pause and think about that. Why are you constantly trying to think of ways to get around shit? What do you think that there's some sort of righteous type of activity that you're engaging in because you're thinking of ways, constantly trying to circumvent things instead of going through things? Instead of like, okay, I'm going to do things the right way. I'm going to follow all the rules and do everything the right way and see how my life comes out. Instead, you want to rebel against the rules, okay, and say that they're unfair when other people have followed the rules and come out on the other side successful, thus negating your contention that they're not fair. Because we have plenty of evidence that plenty of individuals have utilized those rules and followed them and have come out on the other end successful. So what you're saying couldn't possibly be correct. So it's definitely not equitable what we're talking about. We're not dealing in the realm of equity. It really takes about 3 years to wash your mind from the way you have been trained in a lifetime. Well, I think it doesn't take that long if you are a lover of the truth. If you make the truth your religion, see, I made the truth my religion. It's something that's either true or it's not true. Okay, so once you make the truth your religion, once you find out something is wrong, you have such an affinity for the truth that you're just going to immediately acknowledge it because you have a love of truth. So when falsehood comes into your space, you're going to immediately reject it because you have a love for truth. You have to have a love for truth. See, a liar has a love for falsehood. A liar loves lies. That's why I equated with Satan, the adversary, the opposite end of the spectrum. You know, he's the father of the lie. You know what I'm saying? He loves lies. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you have people who embrace that. They love doing that. And they always suffer because karma, abhors the vacuum and it has to come back and rebalance that. And that's why they're going to suffer when the rebalancement comes in. But when they have to pay their debt to society. I said, that's a character flaw, trying to beat the system, just like with most things. Find someone who is there where you want to be and do exactly what they do. Exactly. Get you a mentor. That is a character flaw. And the reason I can identify it, because I was like that at one time. I was just in a haven or, in a group of people where everybody was trying to find some kind of way to get around doing something, trying to find a quick and easy way, just doing all of that. They, just the underworld. That's all that's going on there, and you got people in the underworld who could function at a very high level in the lawful world. They could function at a high level if they would just only redirect their energy. They already have the qualities necessary to be successful. They think it requires an education, a formal education. It doesn't. All it requires is a clear vision of where you want to go and a refusal not to quit until you get there. Those are the only two qualities you have to possess. Once you got those two things down, everything else is brought into your space to make it fit together. But you got to have those two things locked down right there first. It says, I appreciate all the donations, y'all. I appreciate that. A love of wisdom, and that's true. I read that in the Bible at a young age. It says, seek wisdom first, and that's what I did. Seek ye the kingdom and all things will be added to you. He's talking about the kingdom is the conscious mind, the conscious and the subconscious mind. That's the kingdom, the conscious and the subconscious mind. That's why he tells you in Luke 17:21, look ye neither here nor there, for the kingdom of heaven is in you. Now, there's a demon that got involved in that, because in some translations, it's going to say the kingdom of heaven is amongst you. And that is the goal of the people of the elite. They want you to believe in anything you want. The only thing they don't want you to ever do is look inward and discover what your true power is. That's what they don't want. That's what all the biggest deal. That's what the big deal is about. That's what all this is about, keeping you distracted from turning inward. That's what all this is about. All this don't serve any other purpose but to keep you distracted. And the only way you can defeat a God is to make him believe he's not one. That's the only way. How else are you going to do it? If I'm a God, and a God means I'm in control. A God is anyone or anything that's in control. The only thing you can control is yourself, your surroundings. So if I'm in total control of my life, because I understand that's what it is. I'm the creative energy, and I manifest anything in my life that I want. The only way I can defeat that person is to make him think that is a lie. No, you can't do that. You cannot create whatever you want. I got to put that doubt in your mind. And I got to keep that knowledge from you. I got to keep you in a state of ignorance. I got to keep you in a state of darkness. And, I got to unleash the chains on your mind. That's when the light comes in. Light is realization. You know, that's what a true teacher does. A true teacher, he does not indoctrinate you. A true teacher extracts things from you, brings you to a state of realization because all knowledge is already inside of you. It has to be that way. How would you understand it if it's not? It's already inside you. It's locked away. They understood the methodology to lock it away inside of you. And all you have to do is access it. But you got to be open to it. You got to be open to, you got to understand there's an unseen world. All right. That's more powerful than the physical world. The physical world is the realm of effects. It's the plane of effects. The spiritual world is the plane of causation. There is no power in the effect. All power is in the causation. All power is on people who understand spiritual laws and operate from that plane. And that's why in the Hermetic order, they say those who serve on the higher rule on the lower. When you operate and obey the higher laws, okay, you get to dictate what goes on the physical plane. So, but you have to obey. Another way they used to say it in the esoteric circles is the only way to defeat nature is to obey her. And what that means is that you have to submit yourself to the will of Allah. Nature is the will of Allah. Because nothing would exist if Allah had not created it. And the first thing Allah created were the laws of nature. And your Bible, they put it in Proverbs 9:1. It says, wisdom has built her house and she's hewn out her 7 pillars. Wisdom is referred to as a she again. Wisdom is Mother Nature in the Bible. That's Mother Nature in the Bible. They didn't use the term Mother Nature in antiquity. That's a new term. But it's always a reference to the masculine and the feminine in some respect. You have a Father God and a Mother Nature, when the source is neither masculine nor feminine, because masculine and feminine are creations. They came out of the chaos into ordered reality. The source of everything is unknowable and undefinable, and there was never a truer statement than that which was put in the Quran, Circle 7, that the finite cannot circumscribe the infinite. But many of you attempt to do so and anthropomorphize God and make him in your image and after your likeness and place him also within his own creation. When the Creator is all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-present, the all in all. You can't add to him because where would you get it from? You can't take away from him because where would you place it? The Omni, the Alpha and Omega. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I mean, well, when he say he refused to listen to women after Eve ate the apple. You know, what that story is telling you about is, yes, you're not supposed to be following no woman. No. Woman is chaotic. She wasn't meant to lead. And it's going to make them mad me saying this, but I'm a man and I understand how the laws of nature operate. A woman was never intended to lead. Nothing. Not no man. And you have to really sit here and question what kind of man wants to be led by a woman. Because a true man, that's not even in your nature. In your nature, let me tell you as a man how you're thinking. You're thinking, I got a goal I got to accomplish, and nothing is going to stop me from accomplishing it. Okay, that's first and foremost, you know, as a man, you have direction in your life. You have a goal. You have something that you're going to accomplish. And you understand that the accomplishment of that goal, that the only thing that you're going to even allow in your space is things that are going to assist with the accomplishment of that. So if nothing is not, you are the leader. That's what makes you a leader. You know, when they say, he doesn't lead well or properly, when they say shit like that, that means they can't get you to do what they want you to do. Okay, you're a leader when you are actively in pursuit of what your goals are. And if she's not saying anything to accomplish that end or in some kind of way in my life, assisting me with that, she serves no useful purpose whatsoever. Even if it's just I need her around to have sex with. Because sometimes just as a man, you just need that. You know, she understands that's her position. I'm here to serve him sexually. I know he's making all this money. And I'm here to take the edge off the stress whenever it presents itself. If a woman is there for that purpose and it serves that end, hey, so be it. Because that may be what he needs to accomplish his goals. He can say, look, I got everything else. Just when this pressure come on, take this off and let me get back into the fight. Hey, nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But she had to be serving some sort of purpose and some sort of capacity to fulfill that end. That's all. That's what a man is. Even in the conscious and subconscious mind. The conscious mind is the seat of the will. It provides and protects the subconscious mind. It decides what information it will allow to impregnate the subconscious mind and decide what information it will not. And this is, you have this in the Bible where it says, guard your heart, for out of it are the issues of life. What that is telling you is heart, and used in that sense is talking about mind, your subconscious mind. You can get this in a Oxford Unabridged dictionary and look this up and fact check what I'm saying. We're talking about mind. Okay, the issues of life come out of your subconscious mind. So everybody's after your subconscious mind. That's what all advertisers are after. Why do you think they'll put 90% of their budget to advertising? Because everybody's trying to access your subconscious mind, and you do that through repetition. Through repetition. Everybody, that's the most valuable asset a company can get, your attention. They'll pay money for that. You can't make any money without attention. Because they understand the mind. The mind, how the mind works. So you have to protect the subconscious mind. He said the target women's mind because they're easy to yeah, women are emotional. They are easy to manipulate. And they're selfish too. They can be selfish. They can be very, very selfish. You know what I'm saying? They got a nature about themselves, and you've been told about this. You go back and read the Sirach. Pull up on the internet right now, warnings from the Sirach about women. And just read there and see if the men from 6,000 years ago knew what they were talking about. They warning you about the nature of a woman. And like, for instance, there's a verse in the Sirach that says that a man is going to suffer when he allows a woman to take care of him. You're going to suffer. A woman going to punish the shit out of you. She ain't going to ever look at you as a man. And she got to take care of you. I don't care what she says. She got to take care of you. She ain't looking at you as no man. And a lot of them like those type of men because they safe, because they can dictate more, because they can't control a man who's in control of his own destiny, making a lot of money and got a lot of options. They can't control that type of man. That type of man is in control. That type of man is in demand. They can't control a man like that, but they can control a man like you. You want to be taken care of by a woman. You shouldn't even be talking about no damn 50-50. How y'all have them discussions? That's not manhood. Manhood don't discuss 50-50. Manhood has a target. That target is high, and you're going to reach it. And that's what you're after. And it should be high. The benchmark is set high for yourself in your life. And you after that. Mentally, spiritually, and physically. On all planes. Nah. Let me tell you something. You're never remaining the same. You're either growing or dying. You're never remaining the same. Because change is the only thing that doesn't change. Change is the only thing that never changes. So you're either changing for the better or for the worse. All right. So it's foolish for you to remain content, because being content, all that does is that's just the pathway to death. That's the pathway to lack and limitation, is being content. Any billionaire will tell you that. You'll never get content. You'll never get comfortable. As a man, you always keep yourself in a state of uncomfort. Comfort is for women and children. That's what we're working for, to put them in comfort. All right. We take time off and enjoy the fruits of our labor, or when we retire. But when we're building an empire, comfort is not an option. Not for us. Comfort is not an option. I've even made that mistake. Let me tell you, comfort is not an option. How's your purpose even up for discussion? It's not. Complacency. Can we get back on the subject? Well, what was the subject? This is a part of the subject too, because you should be ordering your life. You know what I'm saying? How is this not a part of this conversation? Okay, why are you doing all this status correction shit if you're not trying to live a harmonious life, a life that is in honor, a life that's the way that it should be lived? I don't understand even the object of all this shit we doing so we can have a happy life. It's like, I would think that's the reason for it, 50-50 is a business relationship. Now, 50-50, you're not acting in your full masculine capacity. Now, I can understand why some men will say it, due to the fact of how the characteristics that modern women are demonstrating, and and what I mean by want to use a man. So I'm not saying that a man should allow a woman to use him in any capacity whatsoever. You don't entertain a woman with that mindset at all. You don't entertain a woman like that at all. She's trying to use. That's why I said a woman is coming to assist you in building your empire, and she's truly on board with that. Okay, she can derive a few benefits from you. But a woman that, she got her own thing she's trying to do, she have a career, and all that modern woman talk shit, that ain't gonna do nothing but distract you from what you're trying to achieve. You don't need no woman like that. You don't need not a real man that's building something. You don't need no woman like that. You need a woman that's 100% in her feminine. Because only a woman 100% in her feminine and a man 100% in his masculine can have a harmonious relationship. It can't be that she 80% feminine and 20% masculine, and he's 20% feminine and 80% masculine. Those gonna butt heads with each other. Those percentages, you can't do that. It's not going to work. That's where the arguments and everything like that. Everybody got to be 100% in their respective roles, and you can't compromise that. There's a reason that there are roles in a relationship, because order, nature has dictated that. Nature's dictated that. And when you go against that, you're going to have disorder. You're going to have chaos. You're going to have chaos, which is evident today. Look at your families. Look at how relationships are going today. You're in total chaos. That bullshit y'all trying to do ain't the way it's supposed to be done. The evidence is clear. The evidence is clear. And no man is an island. Anybody telling you that you can make it by yourself, no man is an island. They done inculcated that bullshit inside women's heads, and men have known a long time ago that no man is an island. You can't do anything alone by yourself. We are communal people. It doesn't work like that. That is a false doctrine. That's a demonistic doctrine, is what it is. It's a satanic doctrine. It's a satanic doctrine. It says 50-50. Let me see what else we got. It says, this is why I can't listen to most people on the internet, because they're not real men. I refuse to give hours of my life to some male complaining as a real man on the internet to embrace basic humans. Some cosplaying as a real man. I can't listen to some male cosplaying as a real man on the internet to impress basic humans. I don't know what context you're saying that, but it's just a thing. It's just natural law. It's just a man of protectors and providers. You have to embrace that. It's not no thing where, it's just law, how the laws are. I'm speaking from a lawful perspective. When you understand, this is why I said earlier, when you understand how the natural laws are, and you understand how positive law is, because man-made law is a subset of natural laws. And they have to be in harmony with it. It cannot go against laws. You don't even see the founding fathers talk like that. And but you first have to understand how natural laws are. And one of the natural laws is gender, masculine and feminine principle. And that's a universal principle on the mental, spiritual, and physical plane. So there's a role that the feminine plays and a role that the masculine plays. And that same role is the same in nature on all planes. That's why it's called a universal principle. And really at its base is that the masculine principle is always active and the feminine principle is always passive. Just like on a battery, you have the positive pole and the negative pole. The negative pole doesn't mean it's bad. It means it's receptive. It's receiving ions and protons, from the positive pole of the battery. Okay, so that's what the feminine does. She receives. Mother Earth receives a seed, brings it back in like kind. The universe receives a thought, brings it back in like kind. You impregnate your woman, she's going to bring you a child back as a result of what that seed is. So the feminine principle operates that way. It takes the energy from the masculine and then it brings it into fruition. It gives it some, it manifests it. The gateway of manifestation. It's like that vagina is like a portal. It's like a portal into the physical realm for spiritual beings. You know what I'm saying? But that activity is present in everything. So you can see how people who are behind feminism, how satanic it is, because it's trying to get women to think in a masculine way, and that's going against their nature. And anytime you go against nature, there's going to be chaos, but nature always reasserts itself too. That's the thing too, because it's going to always balance itself back out. So it won't last. Anything that goes against nature won't survive. That's how you know it's not in harmony with nature. It won't survive. Nature is going to be the final arbiter of a thing. And that's why to go against nature, you can be deemed insane. For instance, another principle of nature is cause and effect. If you do the same thing, you'll get the same thing. That's why people say the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing over and over again, hoping for a different result. That goes against the natural law principle of cause and effect. You're insane. You're insane to think there are more than two genders. That's insane. That demonstrates throughout. So I don't even need to engage you in any kind of argument. And whoever is trying to get you to think that way, that's a satanic agenda, because he knows that. Because even in the satanic church, they understand the natural laws. I know that they do. So if they're telling you a lie and getting you to believe it, and now you're trying to live your lifestyle behind it, a lie, whoever fed that to you was a demon. And that's why I'm here right now telling you this, because the truth wills out and you need to be told the truth. And you can reject it or receive it, but at least you're going to be given the opportunity to hear it. And that's just based off of a natural law principle. Anybody understands the natural laws. It's not a thing where I'm trying to be arrogant or anything like that. It's just like, look, I know what my role is as a man, and I know what a woman's role is as a woman. Okay, and that's it. They bring baby, they the gateway, they bring life into here. All right, they got to be taken care of just for that point alone. They make them precious. You don't put a woman, like a pregnant woman. Let me tell you something, like the Scientologists and my man book, Elroy, I forgot his name. He wrote a book called Dianetics. All right, in there it's talking about the conscious and subconscious mind. So when you understand the principle of the subconscious and the conscious mind, then you can follow their philosophy a little bit, because he calls the conscious mind the active mind, the analytical mind, and he calls the subconscious mind the reactive mind. Okay, and he's saying how when the conscious mind gets shut down, the subconscious mind is open to attack. That's what a hypnotist does. A hypnotist, in order to hypnotize you, he has to circumvent the conscious mind, which is masculine, the protector and provider of the subconscious mind. So he has to shut down your conscious mind. And if he can do that, which is the seat of the wheel, and it usually only happens to people who have a weak will, it's very difficult to hypnotize a person who has a strong will. Okay, but a person with a weak will, okay, maybe is easier to hypnotize than a person with a stronger will, because you got to get past that. Now, the conscious mind can be shut down in other ways, like through trauma. Like if you get hit on the head and you get knocked out. Well, you're knocked out, but the subconscious mind is still active and it's still receiving and it's still recording. So if information is put into your subconscious mind, but it's bypassed the analytical mind, which means that information was not analyzed and is put into your subconscious, you can start demonstrating a certain type of mental characteristics or mental problems. Okay, and this is what they're talking about, and they call it an engram. And they want to remove this or discharge this or methodologies to remove that energy. One way it also can be brought into you is at birth when you're a child. Because when a child is forming in the womb, the conscious mind hasn't developed, but the subconscious is. Because all life is connected directly to Mother Nature. Like virgin women, they have a direct connection to Mother Nature. That's why a lot of seers were used as virgins. There's a science to all of this, and you understand it. Like if you go into magic and esoteric information, just you learning that principle, it operates all throughout any of those schools of thought. You'll understand why things are the way they are and how to do certain things. But you gotta obey the principle first and learn what the principles are, because they operate on all planes. And then that's how you can quickly identify who the enemy is, because he's going to constantly try to get you to go against those. That's what it is. That's what Satan does. He's the adversary. He turns everything backwards. He makes you go against all the laws and do unnatural things. But you won't know they're unnatural unless you understand what the laws are and what the consequences are for violating them. And that's when you should be learning first. You know, that should children should be the ones that are being taught this. You're supposed to be learning this in the formation years of your life. It says the enemy is always attacking the subconscious mind. That's exactly correct. That's why I can't. Let me see. It's exactly correct. Yeah, Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard. Yeah, L. Ron Hubbard had it right. If you ever read Dianetics, see, I can read Dianetics because I already understood the natural laws. So when reading his book, I'm saying, yeah, he using the natural laws, but he using different terminology. He made up his own terminology. Instead of conscious and subconscious, he'd call it, the analytical and reactive mind. Instead of a spirit or something like that, he'd call it an engram or an energy charge or something like that. Or maybe a thought form. Like in esoteric circles, you might use the term thought form. But it's an energetic, it's some sort of energetic, some sort of energy. Whether it possesses a level of intelligence or not is questionable. But there are different levels of intelligences that have that demonstrate certain levels of self-autonomous behavior. But we're getting into another discussion. I don't want to go down that road. Yeah, Scientology is I studied it and it was sound. I mean, but you need to understand what the natural laws are, and then that's when you can bring things into agreement. Like for instance, even with the Sufis in the Islamic branch, they follow the principles as well, and you can read that, and you can see they have a very beautiful and amazing way of articulating the principles as well. But it's in the Sufi circles, and same thing with the Kabbalists. They all are following these rules, but they all have their different methodologies in applying them and utilizing them. But everybody, there's only one power in the universe. There's not a multitude of powers. And that one power dictated laws that operate within the universe. That's what the deists were, who were the founding fathers of this country. They weren't Christian, they were deists. Y'all can look this up. That's what Masons are. Masons are deists. And a deist is a person who acknowledges a supreme power, but he does not acknowledge his interference into the affairs of man. That he put the laws in place, and your understanding of the utilization of the laws will dictate how your free will is operated and how you're blessed through life and so forth. You're not blessed by some arbitrary and capricious individual standing in a cloud with billowing white robes with sandals on, looking down on humanity and trying to decide who's going to pray. No, there are laws in place that dictate, that have a cause and effect associated with it. And when you understand that order of operation, now you can master that and you can make those natural laws bend to your will. As I said earlier, the only way to defeat nature is to obey her. Well, that's not that they're convincing, it's that they do follow certain principles that, L. Ron Hubbard, I don't know about his followers. I just read L. Ron Hubbard's book. He disappeared, and he said he was in communication with extraterrestrials. That's why he made a movie called Battlefield Earth, with John Travolta, because John Travolta was a Scientologist, and so was Tom Cruise. They're Scientologists, and you notice they always play the role where they're super intelligent, because in their religion, the removal of those engrams increases your intelligence exponentially. Accordingly, they have this thing clearing. They call it a clearing. But there's bases in it. That's all I'm saying. There's other schools of thought that teach the same thing, but not in the methodology that L. Ron Hubbard talked in. But there are other schools. He's not the only one that talks like that, is my point. It says, I have a bunch of cassette tapes of L. Ron Hubbard. I tried to listen to them, and even though he's speaking English, I can't understand a word he's saying. Well, like I said, you've got to learn the principles first, and then you can see how he's using his own terminology to express the principle. It's a universal principle that everybody abides by, and it's in the Kabbalion. It's the Kabbalion, man. That's what everybody follows that. Every secret order follows those principles. I'm trying to tell you, everybody. Every religion is based on it in some kind of way. Religion, the reason people don't like religion is because it's like an intermediary. And some people can recognize that, but that doesn't mean you should throw it out, because religion still contains a lot of valuable and needed qualities. It's a doorway you need to walk through. That's why we call them schools of thought. The reason we call them schools of thought, it's a school. You attend the school, you get the education, but you don't denounce the school if you never attended class. Just because somebody told you it's no good. You don't do that. You don't have a right to talk about something you haven't studied. If you haven't studied the subject, you need to reserve your comments on it, because you look foolish. Your intelligence and knowledge is amazing. Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you. It says, the modern woman, at least in America, are always working and got some type of business they're doing. So how do you find a 100%? Oh, well, I don't think so. I don't, listen, man, that's Western women, but, it might attract one to yourself. Get on your grind, get in the gym. Like I'm in the gym every day. I'm going to the gym after this. I've been to the gym so much, it's a habit now. I'm getting to that point where I need to go, and which is good. I'm glad I'm going into that territory where I need to go, and just staying consistent. And you'll attract when you vibrate a certain energy, and stop giving attention to certain things. Like one of the things I was doing was spending a lot of time on some of these sites that denigrate women and shit. Leave all that shit alone. It's time to just leave that. Don't get into these echo chambers where they having discussion groups with men and women and talking about what women. Just leave all that shit alone. You don't need to argue with them. You don't need to explain anything to them. You need to get on your purpose and your mission, and what is needed for you will present itself to you at the right time. That's all you need to know. You need to get on your purpose and your mission. That's what you need to be doing. You need to get on that train track to your destination. And along the way, there are stops, and there are people who are going to get on the train on the way to your destination. There are people who are going to get off the train on the way to your destination. But the train is always headed toward the destination. Yeah, and the reason that I'm telling you to let all that stuff go is because it's like a de-weeding process. You can't have negative thoughts in your mind. You have to embrace positivity completely if you want positive results. So you can't feed your subconscious mind this negative content. You can't feed off of that if you are truly wanting to manifest something positive in your life. Okay, so it all begins with you and what you choose to feed yourself with. And if you choose to feed yourself with negativity, that's what you're going to experience. You have to eschew all negativity. This is what Jesus was talking about when he was talking about this de-weeding process. It's like he's talking about the weeds in the garden. He's talking about the weeds in the garden of the mind. The weeds in the garden of the mind is all negative thought. Those are weeds, and you have to de-weed that. And to give you an analogy, you probably heard me say, I used to have a very nice yard. And I'm a yard guy. And I used to get up every morning, and I would get in the grass. I'd pick a certain section, and I'd spend all morning just in the grass pulling weeds with my hand. Not the big weeds, but I would go under the grass and pull all the little weeds forming and everything, because I didn't want a single weed in my yard. That was my goal. After about 2 weeks of doing that, I achieved my goal. I had a trash can full of weeds. There's so many weeds that you couldn't see was in my yard. And after that, I fertilized it and watered it, and it was the most beautiful thing ever. That's what's going to happen to you when you de-weed your mind and you remove all the negativity, all the people who do not reciprocate in your life, all the people who are just, stealing your energy or things like that. They don't reciprocate or anything. You have to remove those. Those are weeds. That's creating negative thoughts in your mind. You have to live a life of only positivity, and then positive results will start to inure to you. But the thing is, you got to let go of all that negativity, and that's everything. You got to stop consuming negative content. You got to stop consuming. That's food for the mind. You're feeding your subconscious mind that through repetition. And you wonder why you can't find a good woman? Okay, you can't find a good woman because, first of all, you're probably not happy with yourself. You need to get in the gym. You need to do whatever you need to do. You need to love yourself. You got to love yourself. Nobody's going to love you if you don't love yourself. No one's going to love you if you don't love yourself. You can't attract love into your life until you love yourself. And the highest form of love is taking care of your body, eating proper food, eating and taking care of your health. Taking care of your health. Your health is listen, your health precedes wealth and all of that shit. You know, you lose your health, you'll find out real quick that money don't mean shit. You lose your health, that money don't mean a damn thing. It's your health. Health is overwhelmed. It's health, wealth, and happiness. Health precedes wealth. Health, wealth, and happiness. Health, then the wealth, then the happiness. You got to have a clear mind. Yeah, you gotta love yourself. What we got over here is thank you for the good words of needing to be on your purpose and mission. I needed to be heard today. Thanks again for sharing. You're welcome. You're welcome. You know, it's just observation from what I'm seeing. You know, I know men want love in their life. You know, that's something we like. We love women. We love women. We love women and everything. You know, I know we love women and everything, but that's part of our downfall is prioritizing women. You cannot prioritize women. You have to prioritize purpose, and women match that purpose. You have to match women to the purpose that you've already established for yourself. You know, that's the proper order for it. If you want a harmonious relationship. But if you're not operating like that, I guarantee you're not going to have a harmonious relationship. But it all begins with you and an achievement of your goals and what the empire that you're building. And that's going to elicit respect out of her anyway. Because when she see you truly dedicated to building something and you actually accomplishing it, okay, you know, how can you not respect that? He's always manipulated by a beautiful woman. You got to stop that too. Beauty is deceptive. You can't let beauty deceive you. See, you learn that when you get older. When you get older, you don't have that knee-jerk reaction to beauty like you do when you're young. When you get older, you still admire beauty, but as soon as you see it, you start measuring how many problems come with it. Okay. You know, it's like, you instantly see, yeah, she bad, but shit, that's a problem. You just instantly go into that mode and doing it. You go into that evaluation checklist mode. How many problems come with that shit? Okay, I already see she like to walk around half naked and like to take a whole bunch of fucking pictures on Instagram. That's a set of problems that's gonna fuck with me as a man, all right? That I'm gonna have to contend with. And you already know she's not gonna let it go. So why bring it into your space? Why bring it into? That's why you see a lot of them have a problem getting you know, they look good as hell, got millions of dudes, you know, looking at them, but ain't no serious dude with money and at a high level taking them seriously. But they feeding on all that attention from that male energy because it does feed them. Women can feed off a masculine energy without being touched. Without being touched. They feminine, they are the receptive principle. They don't need, that's why they love attention so much. And you feed it to them. You feed it to them without being reciprocated anything. You gotta guard. What does it say in the Bible? Give not your strength to women that can destroy kings. You know what that's really saying? Strength is always really equated with sperm. Really what it's saying is you need to protect your sperm, okay? Because that is the elixir of life. You need to protect that. And that is your creative force also. And you need to protect that. And you just don't just haphazardly give it out. You need to be very circumspect in your ejaculation. They have a book called The Tao of Male Sexual Energy. Tao is spelled T-A-O. You ought to check that out. It's called The Tao of Male Sexual Energy. They also have one called The Tao of Female Sexual Energy too. I read that book a long time ago when I was young, in my 20s, and it had a very big impact on me. Another one is Anytime You Want, As Long As You Want by Dr. Charles Reynolds. Anytime You Want, As Long As You Want by Dr. Charles Reynolds, because sperm retention will increase your intelligence as well. Do the courts honor or follow the Bible or any religion? No, there's a separation of church and state. What are you talking about? Do they follow the Bible? No, the courts in the public or administrative courts. They are there to enforce policy. They're looking for compliance and public order. That's what they're there to keep. They're not there to vindicate private rights. Your religion is your private matter. That's not what the courts are. And that goes back to what I'm saying. You don't understand what your rights are. You don't understand what your rights are. You think that they're violating you. They're not violating you. You just don't understand how the law is put together and where your rights are. So you're trying to put this religious veneer over what they're doing, and that's inappropriate. That's not what they're doing. They're operating in a ministerial and regulatory capacity, not a judicial capacity. Private individuals are the ones that are subjected to true judicial process, but you have to be acting in that capacity. Your conduct has to match that. That's not a declaration. You can't declare yourself into privacy. You have to declare it, then structure yourself in a way where you operate in a private. That's called maintaining privacy. Okay? Only then do you have a right to assert something and start talking about God and all this stuff that you're talking about. But that don't have anything to do with it. Religion don't have anything to do with what they're doing. Kids grown, we are now growing in business together. You're a great teacher. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Ultimately, it's who will win the fight when they when they get us fighting each other. There's not enough to agree to fight and change. You have to use these rules, period. And you need to know is the easier way. Listen, it's your ignorance of the law is no excuse. I understand what they're saying. You know, you have to what the problem is. Well, I started SPC University because I've been doing this a long time. So I went through different iterations of this. You know, I started off just people paying me to do a process form. You know, you give me some money and then I'll do your paperwork and shit like that. I went through that iteration. And then I went through an iteration where I try to put responsibility on them to learn the process themselves. And then I went through now where, okay, I see it's not about learning the process. These people need to understand the law and how it is arranged. And then we can, you know, understand our proper approach to it. You know, because reason things are not working is because a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions, and we have to manage expectations because people give these wild, fanciful things like, oh, you can do anything you want to do. Like, for instance, I remember when I came into this, I was told, oh, dudes are getting out buying yachts and shit like that. You know, they're telling me this. Yeah, man, they buying yachts. You know, they buying yachts, doing it, X, Y, and Z. I'm like, really? They getting yachts and shit? So we coming out trying to buy cars and do all these different things that we trying to do because somebody told us that. But when you really look at the law and really study the law, for instance, like HCR 182, where in there does it say that you can purchase anything? So there's nothing in the law substantiating what you're saying. There's nothing in the law substantiating what you're saying. All right, now you can use some sort of inference from contract law because yes, I went in, I got me I went in to get a car, so I got me a purchase order agreement, which is the contract. I got the finance manager to sign it, and now that's an obligation, and now I can set off that obligation. Okay, I understand where it came from, because if you look at it in those terms, yes, you're setting off a debt, because that's what it really is. It's really no word called discharge debt. It's really discharge of a contract, because negotiable instruments are contracts. They're contractual agreements on the way to do business. So I can see where, you know, people would get that from. But where in the law does it substantiate that, especially when you're using words, and words attach jurisdiction. Your choice of words, jurisdiction attaches. So like use the word securitize. If it is defined in a statute, you should not be using it in a private process. If it's defined in a statute, you should not be using it in any private process. I just did a video, 50 terms on different jurisdictions that you shouldn't be using in your processes. Videos on my YouTube channel. There's a whole bunch of terms you shouldn't be using. Because as soon as they see that term, the judge is going to interpret it through a statute because he recognizes it as a statutory term. So it's immediately going to get interpreted through a statute, and now that's how jurisdiction attaches. Jurisdiction, the first level of jurisdiction attaches through words. Words and conduct. Words and conduct. And when it's conduct, consent is not necessary. So that shit, whereas the contract, that doesn't operate under the police power. The police powers, consent is not necessary. But see, that's when you're studying real law, not echo chamber shit with somebody telling you what the real deal is. Because that's not what real law is. You can go and study it for yourself. That's what, or use your chat GPT. Fact check what I'm saying. Okay? Fact check what I'm saying. Because we entered an age where everybody's about to get fact checked. Because I know that's what I'm doing. I fact check everybody. So shit, I'm no exception. Fact check me too. What exactly, so you mean by living privately, what exactly would someone live in the private be doing differently? It's called private ordering. Why don't you start there? Why don't you Google that word private ordering? Why don't you start learning what the framework is first? And then you can probably start understanding how you would be living. But you need to understand what the framework is. So it's called private ordering. That's the framework you're going to operate in. I love this class. You're welcome. All statutes are police powers. Yeah, they are. They are. For the most part, yeah. They have to have a way to regulate their space. It's their space. They're regulating everything they have the power to regulate. I know a lot of y'all don't feel like right to travel. Here, right to travel. Very simply. Right to travel is the right to move from state to state. The reason that they had a right to travel is because in England, they came from England. When you go over to England, you have Europe. Europe. You have Portugal, France, Spain, Italy, Switzerland, the Netherlands, Germany. You got all these countries. They look just like the United States does with Texas, Louisiana, Florida, Oklahoma, California, New York, Illinois, Virginia, Georgia. Those are countries. That's why they have their own individual state constitutions. But what we did differently than all the other countries have done is that we united. That's why we're called the United States, and we formed a central government, and we took down the borders, and now everybody has a right to travel freely. In Europe, you can't do that. I need a passport to go from France to Spain. That's what they mean by right to travel. And anybody can Google this right now, and you will get that answer. The AI is going to give you that answer. Google is going to give you that answer. But watch them act like they don't see it. They interpret right to travel as I'm traveling in my conveyance, and they don't understand that you're operating a motor vehicle, which is a 6,000-pound piece of steel capable of killing someone. They're not going to take that right from you, but they're going to regulate it to ensure there's going to be safety, that you don't harm somebody else. They have a right to do that. That falls under the police powers. You're not going to win that argument. I don't care how much you want to argue on it. And nobody is winning it. That's why you can go do right now, go to YouTube, put in sovereign citizen fail, and see about 3,000 people over there getting pulled over, getting arrested, asserting right to travel. I don't have to do anything. You just go do that right now and look yourself. Day watching videos. You should do that. If you somebody right to travel and you have not spent time on the internet watching those videos, I don't know what to tell you. You're deceptive. You're trying to ignore something. As much as I like you, I fact check you, and all the time with my chat GPT. You're supposed to be even advise people to. Yeah, you fact check me, what I'm saying. Fact check what I'm saying. Hold on, man. Zuri, I'm in a live, Zuri. What's going on?
I just wanted to, I'm logging out for today. I booked you a consultation for next Friday. He's already paid. And then I reached out to that member about, he just needed a new password to log in. So that's all done. I'm just running payroll. I wanted to let you know.
Okay, all right, go ahead. All right.
Okay.
She on top of a job. I can't. They're always on top of their job and trying to get paid. They're always on top of their job when it's time to get paid, boy. And I tell you, nah, she do a pretty good job, I guess. I could be a better. I think I need to work on my leadership skills for real. I know that's where I'm deficient in my leadership skills as far as running a business. That's something I have to develop. You know, you have to develop your leadership skills to a very high level if you want to have a very high success rate in your business. You know, you got to hone your leadership skills because you got to learn how to delegate authority, and you have to, you have to structure everything properly and delegate authority. You have to put in a system. That's what your game is. Your end game should be a system in place where you can sit in your ass and don't have to do nothing. You know, the end game is to do what you want, when you want, where you want, how you want, whenever you want, with who you want. That's the end game. That's the end game. But I sure don't use right to travel. I agree using that argument is pathetic, but there are many ways. It just don't have no basis in anything. You know, just go on and get the damn license and do what you're supposed to do. You know, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with telling you can't drive through a school zone at 100 miles an hour? You know, it's like, I don't see, is this the issue? I'm going to tell you what I really think. I really think at the end, behind all of this is people are broke. They don't have any money. Or they get arrested behind some, or something like that because, they want to be able to drive in their car and smoke weed or drink liquor and, just do something like that that could possibly harm someone. Because, if you get inebriated behind the wheel, that does pose a significant safety concern, public safety concern. So, it's just things like that. I say, what's behind the push? You have to look at that too. Why do they want all this freedom that they're claiming that they're supposed to be entitled to? Why is it that you want to circumvent this small regulation? Like they just want you to get a license and demonstrate competency and have a license. The license is so they can attach liability to you once you violate one of the public rules. Okay? They have to attach liability to you because you are operating in the public. So if you're going to come into the public, there's liability attached to conduct that you engage in to the public. There's duties attached to it. There's a social contract that you have to honor when you're in the public. Private, you don't have to. That's something else. But private is not a declaration. Private is a structure and a conduct that you engage in. But y'all try to act like it's just a declaration. That's crazy. In law, actions speak louder than words. Put that in Chat GPT. In law, actions speak louder than words. And ask them for some case law to substantiate it. Ask it for some case law too. I didn't say pay that bullshit ticket. I said way more ways to beat it. Oh, okay. Well, I'm just saying because I don't need to, but I don't need to pay for it. You can satisfy the obligation any way you want to. I'm just saying that's what the original thing was anyway. The original remedy was the fact that there wasn't any money. So why are you arguing with the bankrupt system and you're the creditor and they're the debtor? That was the original, approach to all of this. But, everybody got away from that. I got called a constitutional and let go. I got called a constitutionalist and let go in LA. People have all kind of wins. I've had wins, But I'm going to tell you, what's been working for me the best is the fact that I haven't been in their courts in probably about 15 years. And I like to keep it that way. I don't like going, I try to practice what I preach and stay out of their courtrooms. Why are you ending up in court so much? That's the question I need to ask. I don't like going into their courts at all. I do everything I can and order my life in such a way where I don't have any interaction with them at all. Looking for sons and daughters. I think it's entitlement. I got called a constitutionalist. Real talk right there. Yeah. I'm not trying to engage these people at all, man. Hell no. Can I use the rules of civil procedure to win any civil or criminal case? You notice how he phrased that any rules of civil or criminal procedure to win any civil or criminal case. If you can prove the criminal jurisdiction is civil in nature, He act like I don't understand how he tried to phrase that question. Now I just threw one back at him. Let's see how he handled it. Let's see him toss it back. He gonna ask me a question. He says, "Can I use the rules of civil procedure to win any case, civil or criminal?" So I threw one back at him. If you can prove that the criminal jurisdiction is civil in nature, let's see how he handled that. Yeah, everything is done. When anybody throw a question at you, always throw a question back at them, because a deceiver moves in generalities. So always take them to a specific point. Take them to a specific point. It says, yeah, everything is done correctly. I haven't been in court and I drive safely, so they can't claim exigency. Well, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, that's just called following the law, obeying the law, you know? If they got rules, and that's what I'm trying to say. What is it that you got a problem with following the traffic laws, you know? Because if you're following the traffic laws, you won't get fucked with. So if you're not following the traffic laws, you're going to get fucked with. So is there a problem following the traffic laws? I guess that's what I should be asking, you know, because they're there for public safety issues. There's a reason we have a traffic light, a green light, red light, yellow light, and stop signs, and, you know, and shit like that. That's for safety. Are you saying you don't have to follow any of that? It's hard for the living to speak to dead entities. No, it's not. It's very easy. It's hard when you choose to be ignorant and you're lazy. It is hard when you choose to be ignorant and you're lazy. It says bench warrant for arrest, but I'm waiting for dude to post the answer to what I was saying. Bench warrant for arrest, but the court using our old addresses and never received a summons or indictment. That's your responsibility to put in a change of address with the post office. That's not their responsibility. They're going to send the notices to the last known address, and that's what all they have to do. Your responsibility is to put out and make it and give a public notice of how to contact you in case you need to be served. That's your job. And you do that with a change of address form at the post office. See how you know you got to put the accountability on them. They don't never want accountability for anything. They try to put it on the government. You gotta start taking account. When you start taking accountability and stop looking for ways to get around and understand, just go through the process of what you need to do, you know, and abide by the rules, I guarantee your life will start to, it'll be much more peaceful. You'll have more peace of mind. You'll have less conflict. You have less conflict. And especially if you can couple that with a definite chief aim, a goal that you're trying to accomplish. You'll have a lot of peace of mind, and your life will start to order itself. And the younger you do this, the better. If you're young listening to me, the younger you do this, the better. It says, my sister was almost killed by a licensed driver. Well, I mean, nobody said that having a driver's license is going to prevent accidents from happening. That's not the point. The point is, now if an accident does happen, that person has a driver's license and we know how to attach liability to them. Because that same accident could have happened and you wouldn't have not known who that person was, or no way to identify them, or no way to attach liability to them. That's what the license is for. It attaches liability and duties, imposes duties on you. And while you're in the public. And operating a motor vehicle is 100% wholly public. Ain't no such thing as traveling in a private conveyance. Just ain't no such thing. It ain't. It don't even exist. I'm saying that to you, and I know y'all ain't gonna like me for saying it, but hey, I gotta speak the truth, though it be bitter to others. Speak the truth, though it be bitter to others. Catering to, let's see, Oh, we got some people over here. Hold on, I didn't see him. Hold on, who's this? Mike Thornton. All right, come on in, Mike Thornton. Hold on. Let me see if I can. Do I need to turn up? Can you hear me? Can I hear? Okay, speak now.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. I have my volume down on my phone. Go ahead.
In the words of Shifu, man, free peace to the guys, peace to the guys.
Peace to the
Nothing
guys.
else, man.
Peace to the guys.
Just, I'm in every class, man. I'm in every class. You know, those who don't
Yeah.
know you just don't know you, bro. I'm gonna tell you that right now. You know?
Yeah, how have the classes been? Tell the people about how classes are. Tell them how the classes have been.
The classes are good, and the one thing about my teacher, he will go over these things dramatically and compound these principles into you. You know, I'm looking at all things differently now because of just listening to you for the last year. It's been a year and 2 months, Yusuf. And I tell you, you've changed the way my mind has thought about everything. I was one of those sovereigns, man. I'm the one I told you that you saved me with that public and private chart. And at the last minute, I was able to do some equity business out of the court and walk away. You know, and I tell you, you saved my life. Man.
Yeah, it was, when in the beginning, when I first came into this, like I tell the story, I didn't have anybody telling me what to do. I had to go to the law library. So early on, I got into the habit of reading case law, reading, even though I didn't understand it to the level I do now, but I got into the habit of actually going to the law library and getting familiar with law books and reading them and understanding principles of law. And that public and private was always a guide for me because all law is either public or private. It was the Supreme Court justice that said that. And that stayed on the back of my mind too, that all law is either public or private. And everything I see, that's how everything breaks down into a public and private side. The public is constitutional law, criminal law, administrative law, tax law, public international law, and the private side is property, tort, contract, family, private international law. Once you understand how it is arranged, it's mapped out, now you can order your thinking and your approach to reading the laws and understanding where they apply and where they don't apply, because you can understand that. That's jurisdiction. You know, that's how you understand jurisdiction. But you're not going to understand jurisdiction if you don't understand the law and have a respect for the law. See, a lot of these people, they don't have a respect for the law either. They truly think that they can do whatever they want to do, or they're supposed to be able to, until they run into something that's going to show them that they're wrong.
Well, I tell you, that there cleared my head. I mean, my wife, she doubted. I mean, I came up in some. Let me just say this: I came up in a lot of different information. I'm the guy I was telling you that we had a ministry going. I was in natural law before I was in God's law. You know, and became a Christian, and then we moved from there, and then we ended up having the kids take and moved me into fighting a battle for years, 8 years, Yusuf, going through in and out of the courts for these children. And we won the battle, but I tell you, it was something dramatically happened when I started searching. When I started searching, something wasn't making sense. And when I opened up, and I think it was, who was it? It was, I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, that showed me the UCC connection. And that there rang out true because I remember reading the Constitution. And then I got in trouble because I became one of those out there thinking that I'm entitled to travel. You know, and I was getting mad. I was already upset because of what they did for me for years. And I kept this chip on my shoulder. And what happened? I got put in my place. But when I got arrested, and the way I signed my papers and what I was doing, you know, they held me in holding for like forever. And then they put me in population 10 minutes before they closed everything down and put me in a cell by myself because some of that information, sir, it came from just grabbing it from administrative process, knowing what they were doing. And I tell you, it's weird because one of those documents I put in the record after I got out of jail, they didn't submit to the record. I tried to put it in there at the last minute. The clerk told me she did, but I tell you, it's a good thing now I know that I should have never put all that stuff in the record. And at the end of it all, it was their public and private that saved me when I went at the last minute. And I'll never forget their faces. They cleared the courtroom, Yusuf.
Yeah.
And that's when it told my wife sit there and watched it. Now we've been on you for the last year. And now we are structuring business. We want business out of this thing. I'm not trying to get nothing.
And you know, that's the thing, you know, it's like it is important to know the court process because the courts are operating in a certain kind of a way, in a certain type of nature. And they are hiding some things. They are hiding. I ain't gonna deny that. it is stuff that they're hiding about their true nature and their true operations behind the scenes. But you got to understand that this is what you got to understand is, first of all, they have a right to operate like that because you're coming into their jurisdiction. Okay, they have a framework set up and it operates in a certain kind of way. The basis of that framework is that it's a debt-based system. So the creation of money comes with the creation of debt. So they're always trying to create obligations. And they do that with the court system a lot. That's why people call the court system a bank, because they create debt. Anytime the court puts a lien or something on the entity, is creating money. Because that's how money is created. Money is created through obligations, through liens, through creditor and debtor relationships. That's how money is created today. So they are trying to do that, and that part of what they do is what they try to shield from you. And that is why, like, when you come in and you start really examining that aspect of it, that's when you see them bringing you in court by yourself, trying to shield things, and you asking certain questions, that aspect of it is real. And that's where it also comes in. Well, what is the nature? Like, dude, he just asked me a little smart alecky question. Can I use the rules of civil procedure to win a civil or criminal case? And the thing about it is that criminal is really truly civil in nature too, because the admiralty is criminal, but it's civil. Anybody can go and read this right now. It has a criminal aspect to it, but it's civil in nature. The civil used to be used as a punishment mechanism. It was used at one time. That's where debtors' prisons came from. The civil was. Okay. What they have done is they have not converted it into an admiralty jurisdiction. They have borrowed the procedural framework of admiralty into this statutory jurisdiction, because admiralty or maritime rules facilitate commerce better. And that's what it is. It's like a commercial jurisdiction. Common law doesn't facilitate. It's too slow for commerce. It's too slow for commerce. So that's why they use it.
I read that book, Clerks and Praxis. They would just listen to you, Yusuf, and they would just take the time to slow down and apply the principles and do some of that research. Like you said, creditors and their bonds, I get stuff from that every time I read it. Every time I read it.
Yeah, if you stop, don't call it an admiralty maritime. That's why they look at you crazy when you come into the court saying that, because it's not admiralty maritime. It's colorable. It is. And anybody that doesn't believe me, just do something like take something like Clerk's Praxis, download it, and then get your creditor and debtor laws or your attachment lien laws, and put all that, upload that in the Chat GPT, and ask it to synthesize it and compare and contrast it, and tell it to say, can you extract from me, is this the origin of, is admiralty the origin of what the processes they're using in this statutory scheme, and see what it tells you. That's how you got to do, because what they do is they borrow from, you got to understand, history is built on, laws are built on the history. They didn't just make all this stuff up yesterday. All this stuff they're doing been going on for 6,000 years. They've just been, modifying it and improving on it over all this time. So you can backtrack the origin of it. You can see where what came from, admiralty or common law. The admiralty and common law courts have been vying for power for centuries. Sometimes the common law courts would dominate, and in other periods of time, the admiralty courts would dominate. The thing with this age is there isn't any money. They've removed gold from circulation. So they're using a fiat currency system that isn't constitutionally sanctioned in a republic form of government. So they had to shift it over into a territorial jurisdiction. And that's where Article 1, subsection 8, clause 17 comes in, this territorial jurisdiction, which falls under Congress. And Congress created you like a membership card called a social security number, and you had to be a willful participant, and they styled it as benefits and privileges, not rights. So you were coming over into their jurisdiction to partake of benefits and privileges, and you're getting taxed in that monetary system with Federal Reserve notes. It's a Federal Reserve system that they operated under. And they had to do that because the Federal Reserve, gold and silver is the only thing that's constitutionally mandated as a form of payment of debt. But to utilize this system they're using, they had to put it in a territorial jurisdiction. And a territorial jurisdiction, Congress exercises plenary power. And that's why everything operates the way that it does is on a voluntary system. It's not mandated. You have the choice of whether or not you want to participate in their system or not. You're not being made to participate in their system. You can't ever say that. You can move to the country. You don't want to because you love the devil because he gives you nothing. You love the fact that you like staying in an apartment. You like internet. You like internet. You like cell phones. You like driving cars. You like stopping at the gas station or charging up your car. You like going to a concert. All that shit falls under public regulated activity. How could it not be? And then you complaining, talking about they don't have jurisdiction over me? You sound crazy.
Business in it, you need to follow the rules if you're going to do business, and that's what it is in the public. It's all business.
It's all business. That's why the remedy was this HCR 192 because at the end of the day, their Achilles heel is that there isn't any money. It's a debt-based system. That was the Achilles heel. They don't have any money. So that's where the discharge and all that fit in from the fact that they cannot require you to pay a debt with any particular species of currency. I've never seen it in a contract. They had to remove the gold clause, so they can't put no. See, because negotiable instruments are debt instruments. They're credit instruments. That's not money. So they can't put that in a contract. So that's the Achilles heel. There isn't any money. There's a public and a private, and it don't mix. There is no money. You have to stay on at all costs and stay out of public, stay out the courts. Those are the rules. I've been saying them same rules since I came through the door, and they still apply. I'd add one. The one I'd add at the end now is own nothing and control everything. It's a public and a private, and they don't mix. There is no money. You have to stay in honor at all costs. Do not participate in public controversy and own nothing and control everything. That's the rules.
They go to school, Yusuf. I'm telling you, man. I love your school. I love it. I was listening to you when you was going around. You was on vacation, bro. You was going everywhere, and I was in the middle of this fire, and I was getting on your videos, and you said that video. Listen, if you ain't got this information, you ain't learned, and you ain't did it, you ain't got no business in the courtroom. You need to study. You need to stop. And you pulled that thing up, and I just pulled back. God told me. I felt the Creator told me to stop.
Yes.
He said, learn. Get out of this and then just learn. So I restructured my whole life.
And I've been listening to you. You have been learning, in class and everything. You do demonstrate competency and the understanding of the material. I will give you that shout out. You're not just talking. You actually are, assimilating the information, and demonstrating competency, asking good questions. People ask good questions. They ask penetrating questions, and I welcome that all the time. That's what you're there for. Hold on real quick. Somebody asked me this question. Hey, thank you for the $9.99 donation. I appreciate it. It says, what would we need to do to prove a criminal charge is commercial in nature? I'm dealing with a victimless drug felony situation and asked for the nature of the action on record, and they obfuscated. The thing about it, of course, they're going to do that because they're going to try to circumvent that. All the approaches that y'all have been trying to use now, they ready for. They've been studying for them and everything. They've been studied everything that's been talked about on the internet. They study for it, but it's just essentially they can't get around the Sixth Amendment or a bill of particulars because that's the true nature of the action. You're asking them, okay, clearly define for me where you derive your jurisdiction from that is supposed to be derived from the Constitution, and you need to know what those jurisdictions are. So there's an admiralty. Admiralty has a criminal aspect to it, and that criminal aspect is civil in nature. Now, let me ask you this. Why don't you study admiralty so first you can see what admiralty is? Why people don't do that? Why are y'all so dependent on the fact that I'm telling you what the jurisdiction is? Why don't you study it? And then when you go back and look at the statute, you'll be able to see what it is. Like, damn, it's the same thing I just read over here in admiralty.
Come on, bro.
That's what I did. You know, that's why I'm telling you this. I went and studied admiralty, and then I studied their statute. I'm like, damn, that's the same shit I just read over here in this admiralty statute. They do the same thing. That's how you know. And then you'll be able to look at the statute like, man, this right here seems like this is in the nature of admiralty. You're requiring a bond. You're trying to put a lien on my property and against my estate. All this kind of stuff. You're initiating this with a warrantless arrest. All these different things. All these are the same things I just saw in admiralty. But there are some differences. Like, okay, is there a contract? Is this some sort of debt collection? You know, if it's a debt collection, that means that there's been some sort of a penalty that has been put in place somewhere. You know, I need to ask for that. Yeah, I agree. It's not easy to move in court, you know, but you're going to have to develop new, you know, like I used my chat GPT and came up with some cold-blooded verbiage to use. I'm not going to put it out on here, but I gave it to my class. It's cold-blooded. You know, let me tell you something. Chat GPT, you need to put into Chat GPT your, just do this, load their entire case, get all his documents, and upload it to Chat GPT. And ask for what is the course of action you need to take. ChatGPT is going to identify the weaknesses in their case. It is. It's going to look at everything. It's going to look at the warrant. It's going to look at, you know, any filings that have been done in, any arguments that they're making. It's going to look at the evidence. It'll look at everything. And it'll be able to weigh that shit very fast. And it'll be able to give you some sort of remedies that are available to you based off of what it saw. Now, based off those remedies that are presented to you, you could use those as, if you want to go this route of proving a civil jurisdiction, you can start your study there. That's going to direct you into the statutes to go and look at. And then when you look at those statutes, you need to see if the nature of those statutes are they similar to like what you just read over here in admiralty. And now you know that it's partaking of the nature of this admiralty. And that's where the civil implication is coming from. It's coming from that because admiralty is civil in nature. All right. It is the law of the sea, but it's not dealing with the locale. It is dealing with the subject matter. And the subject matter is commerce. And 90% of commerce goes over the sea and another 10% goes over land. You know, like with the trucking and all of that kind of stuff. So, you know, you have to really get into the study of it and you'll see what I'm talking about. Because everything I'm spitting right now is coming from me studying admiralty. And like in particular in the clerk's praxis in the first chapter, because it's put in 3 parts. The first part is going to give you the historical analysis of admiralty. And that's when there's going to mention it being the law of the sea. Does it have in personam or in rem jurisdiction against a person or against a thing? You know, how do you attach property, you know, with the initiation of the person and to compel appearance? How do you compel appearance? What is a flight risk? A flight risk in admiralty is this. A flight risk is a person that doesn't pay their debts. It's called an absconding debtor. So they look at the fact that if you have a business, is it closed a lot? Do you have a gambling problem? Do you have a lot of creditors knocking at the door? They're going to look at your credit report and see, do you pay all your bills on time? Those are character indicators. And they utilize that in admiralty. That's a flight risk. So it's not just you've had a failure to appear to on your record. They're looking at a lot of different things. In admiralty, that makes you a flight risk is you don't pay your debts. So if we're talking about commerce, but you find all of that out, so you'll know that I'm not just speaking conjecture or anything or just making up something once you study admiralty. When you study admiralty, you see that there's a portion in there that talks about flight risk. And what they talking about flight risk is something completely different than in modern courts. Or is it? Is this really what's being considered behind the scenes and not? Because I know I told a judge one time, I said, Your Honor, why can't I get a bond? I said, hey, I've never missed a court date. And then I went to the mic and I said, and I'm not an absconding debtor. And boy, I just saw everybody's eyes just, you know, just trip out and everything. I said it to a judge one time. See, if there's an occult world going on, they're not going to tell you everything that's going on. It's an occult world. It's hidden. So they ain't going to never acknowledge it because they're hiding it. but it's certain things that they have to abide by. Like one of them is that they ain't never going to lie to God. That's why they won't sign affidavits under penalty of perjury. They're not going to do that. They're going to honor God. They take those affidavits seriously. They take perjury seriously. They take that very, very seriously. So that right there, if you can leverage that in some kind of way, in an intelligent way, and you do that through requiring them to produce affidavits under penalty of perjury. That's how you leverage God, is through affidavits. Because what? Affidavits are attested to what? Under God. You know, the whole court system runs off of God because everything runs off of sworn testimony. That's what the Bible was for. You swearing on the Bible.
Yeah, well, they take that out of courts, though, Yusuf. They took that out of courts now.
They did. They took all of it out of courts because, you know, they're administrative courts. It really is supposed to be a separation of church and state, but I think it was really more traditional in the sense that it's supposed to, because the true judiciary does honor, they are the representatives of God on earth. That's why they wear those robes, you know, because the original judges were the Levitical priesthood. The priests were the judges. Because in order to judge somebody, you had to know God's law. How are you going to judge how are you going to judge people differently than the way God judges people? So if you're going to be a judge on earth, it got to be according to God's law. So the original judges were priests. You know, that's how even when you had a divorce, you had to go see the priest or the preacher first before you got a divorce. You didn't go to the court. Now they take you to the court. But to get a divorce, how it was traditionally done, it was done through the priest. And you had to talk to him first because what? Marriage is a what? Religious institution. God is who sanctions marriage. Let no man separate what God has put together.
No doubt. That's a covenant. It's a contract.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? But I hope I answered your question for you. I answered as best that I could. You know, you talking about, you know, you could go in there and ask a question, you know, is this civil or criminal? You know, you go in there and say, Yana, you know, I'd love to, you know, put a plea in, but, you know, first and foremost, it's my understanding that I have a Sixth Amendment protected right to know the nature and cause of this action. Is that or is that not correct for the record? Yes, you do. Okay, thank you. Okay, also, Yana, it is my understanding that, well, no, your next question is going to be, is this a civil or criminal action? It's a criminal action. Okay, thank you. Okay, according to the Constitution, there's only two criminal actions or criminal jurisdictions under the Constitution. One is under the common law, and the other constitutes a condition of contract under criminal aspects of a colorable admiralty jurisdiction. Under which two of those jurisdictions is this court trying this criminal action? You know, that's a very hard question when it's done correctly, because now you have to acknowledge the fact you do have a Sixth Amendment right to know the nature and cause of the action, and they have to definitely identify where that delegation of authority is being derived from as enumerated under the Constitution. And that is usually going to be under one of the three branches of government. Is it going to be under the legislative branch, the executive branch, or the judicial branch? But what the reason, though, you have to also pause and think, why are you asking this question? You really only have grounds to ask this question if you're truly acting in a private capacity and haven't been an acceptor of benefits and privileges. That's the only grounds you really should be asking that question. But you can't be accepting benefits and privileges and then try to eschew the corresponding liability that is associated with the acceptance of those benefits and privileges. Equity is not going to allow that. So, you know, we are judged under an equitable scheme, fairness, impartiality, and even-handed dealing. But to get equity, you must do equity. You know, clean hands and good faith. All that has to be demonstrated. So, you know, you have to honor them. They have a delegation of authority. I've never understood why people say that, is to act like they don't have any rights. There's something called public rights doctrine. The public has rights. Okay, and those rights come from the Constitution because they have a delegation of authority. What is it that people don't understand about that? I don't understand. Some stuff I just don't understand why it's even an argument. I don't understand. You know, that should be basic civics 101. That's basic civics we're talking about. One-on-one. This is not no complicated subject. Somebody has to bring sanity to the space because it's going down an insane path. I see it. And I'm one of the OGs in the space. I watched it for a very long time. I'm just here to, my message to you, can do what you want, because I am intentionally trying to separate myself from people who are not going to pivot and change course. I got to separate myself from you. I can't.
Well, I'm of course, Sifu. We're about to pick up a lot. We're about to, we're about to start the business here in this week. We're going to get us a license, get an LLC.
That's a good thing. You know, you should have some sort of business. You should be industrious. You know, you need to put together some sort of business. You need to be thinking about what kind of legacy you're trying to leave for yourself. You know, you need to be focused on that. What is your legacy that you want to leave? You know, it doesn't have anything to do with education or anything like that. You just have to have a desire and want to do that. You know, start focusing on that. And all this other stuff will fall into place. But right now, I'm trying to keep you out of trouble. Why do you keep attracting court into your life? You know, we have to address the cause. And and then that'll help with the effect. You know, but you just want to come in, you want to address the effect. But we have to look at the cause. That's like taking aspirin. You take aspirin, aspirin just deals with the effect. The cause might be the fact that you keep poisoning your body, and now you got some sort of blockage in some sort of blood vessel in your brain, and that's causing a pain. And that pain is a symptom of a much deeper issue. And all the aspirin is doing is just numbing it so you don't feel it. Okay, we got to look at what is the core issue. Okay, the core issue is how you choose to think. That's why the first thing in court, what they do an examination and a cross-examination. They're looking at your mind, mens rea, criminal intent. That's what's being measured. So you need to, first of all, educate yourself properly. You know, you got to do that. You're not going to get around that. You're not going to get around it. Hey, look, y'all, I got to get off. I got to hit the gym before I get too late. How long is that? I'm on 2 hours and 13 minutes. I'll be back. Damn. I appreciate y'all riding with me. Like, comment, and subscribe under this video. I will answer as many questions as I can under the video on YouTube. I don't know if I can do the same thing on TikTok, but I appreciate everybody on TikTok as well. All right, peace to the gods. Hope to see you at class tonight. You know, come and join the class. It's at 9 o'clock tonight. We have trust class tonight. I love the trust classes. We go over some case law. We're going to go over a case law tonight. It's over a family trust, you know, because it's nice to read about all of the disputes that can arise and how even in an irrevocable trust, how still it can be some, sometimes, you know, like kinks in your armor. And, you know, that's why you study this subject, because if you want a really, truly bulletproof trust, you got to get those kinks out. And how you do that is to identify through other people having made that mistake. That's why you read case law and like, oh, I see where he erred. I'm not going to make that mistake. But there are certain principles that guide equity. Trust is a creature of equity, but it's principles that guide the decision of the judges. And that's what's beautiful about it, when you see how they use those principles to make their decision. And now you can kind of gauge their intelligence level. You know, I give judges they props, man. A lot of them, some of them are legal geniuses. Some of them, when they reach that level, like of a Supreme Court justice, man, you know, because once you understand the scientific schematic of everything, you can see how he has a scientific mind in order to manipulate the whole schematic. He has mastered the schematic. That's why he's gotten to that position as Supreme Court justice. And it is scientific in its application. And you can appreciate that once you're like, okay, yeah, you cold-blooded. Yeah. Yeah, you're nice with it. You can respect it. I'm telling you. You can respect it. You're like, yeah, you're nice with this, how you did this. I see how you did that. And you'll stop demonizing them, because you'll understand the rationale that they used to reach a decision. And you can see whether they did that properly or not. I'm trying to tell you. Anyway, I got to go. Get out, like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see y'all at class tonight. Peace. I'm out. All right. Got to get out of here. Peace.